Am. Zhang Rui traded his awakening voucher for the farm lord token the school beauty had. For real? What's he even trying to get out of this? TSK. If you ask me, he's definitely got a crush on Xiao Qianqian. Ugh, simp alert. Simp hard enough and you'll end up with nothing. Hey, quit gossiping about others. We ought to figure out how to develop our territories once we're in the boundless void. Zhang Rui walked back into the classroom and headed straight for his window seat at the back row. He paid no mind to his classmates' whispered chatter and strange stares. So what if they stared? A guy who's good-looking can't stop people from looking, can he? As a transmigrator, he'd already survived far more mortifying embarrassment back on his old world, like forgetting to clear his browser history. Compared to that, the foolish stunt he'd just pulled barely registered, even if normal people would think he'd lost his mind. And all of this was because they lived in an era ruled by lords, where countless races vied for supremacy. Every human on Blue Planet who turned 18 received an awakening voucher. With this token, they could enter the boundless void at noon on October 1st of that same year or the next, spawn a random territory all their own, and become a lord. Among humanity, a rare few possessed extraordinary talents. And Xiao Qianqian, the school beauty blessed with curves and looks rivaling the pirate empress, was one of them. A month prior, on her 18th birthday, fortune had smiled upon her. A deity of the boundless void had favored her, gifting her a token that bound a divine grace territory. Unlike generic random territories, divine grace territories held no uncharted wilderness. Their terrain layout and newbie starter packs were far superior, vastly more valuable. Everyone had thought Xiao Qianqian was set to soar to greatness. The line of people desperate to latch onto her influence stretched from the South Pole to the North. But fate had twisted against her. The deity who'd blessed Xiao Qianqian was the god of millet, also known as the god of agriculture, ruler over crop growth and soil fertility. The lord token he bestowed came with prime farmland covering a staggering 90% of the territory's total area. Yet the territory only held 3 basic facilities: a lord's manor, a single well, and a barracks. That barracks could recruit just 1 human unit. In the boundless void, farmland was far more than a logistical lifeline. It was a critical strategic resource. Farmlands absorbed void energy and channeled it into crops, accelerating their growth and filling them with stored energy. When troops consumed these crops, their bodies converted the stored energy into raw stats, boosting their combat power. In a sense, farmlands were armories, and grain was ammunition. But she only had 1 soldier. No matter how vast her fields, how could 1 man tend them all? It was an inescapable vicious cycle. You needed labor to farm. Labor came from troops. Troops needed grain to survive and grow stronger, and grain required farm labor to produce. With merely a single unit, she could never unlock the full potential of her premium farmland. Worse still, every troop had a daily cap on how much void energy they could process from food. There was no way to force that 1 soldier to gorge himself non-stop and skyrocket in power. Once the 3-day newbie grace period ended, the protective barrier surrounding new territories vanished. Holding a massive expanse of prime farmland, a priceless strategic resource, yet lacking troops to defend it put her in the worst predicament, possessing a treasure that invited endless greed. Without soldiers or defenses, the territory lay exposed on all sides. Monsters could break in from any direction, and every passing lord could plunder her stores with ease. History was littered with cautionary tales, just like hers. Some dreamed of grinding through the early game, stockpiling grain, then unlocking extra barracks to stage a dramatic comeback. But the more grain you hoarded, the more monsters were drawn by its scent. Trying to lay low and farm quietly? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Territories dominated by sprawling farmland were universally dubbed sheep trapped in a pack of wolves. A guaranteed losing start. For an entire month, Xiao Qianqian had endured every kind of gaze imaginable. Pity, schadenfreude, and calculating greed from lords planning to borrow her grain once they entered the void. Even her closest childhood friend had cut ties with her, terrified of being dragged down alongside her. That farm lord token would have been rejected even if given away for free. But to Zhang Rui's eyes, it was a priceless treasure. From the day he'd woken up in this world 18 years ago, he'd wielded a secret cheat, planting tech tree. Gain 100 tech points for every full year you survive. Gain 1 tech point for every 500 kilograms of crops harvested within your territory. Tech points unlocked nodes on the tech tree, granting game-breaking agricultural innovations. 3 Tier 1 breakthrough technologies were available for preview. Behold, the Farm King arrives non-upgradable. Unlock requirement. Bind a private territory plus 100 tech points. Effect: spend 5 kilograms of grain to summon 1 basic farmer. Maximum summon cap: 10. Abundance max level 3 effect: crop yields multiplied by 2 to 10 times at harvest. Unlock requirement: unlock Farm King plus 200 tech points. 18 years of accumulation left Zhang Rui with a total of 1,800 tech points. More than enough to unlock both of these innovations. Abundance's multiplied harvests would supply all the grain he needed to summon farmers, immediately solving his labor shortage for the fields. Once these two nodes were activated, the third Tier 1 tech became accessible. Premium Produce Max Level 3 effect: 30 chance to harvest premium crops when gathering yields. Premium crops hold 10 times the void energy of standard crops of the same type, with identical digestion times. This technology was the core reason Zhang Rui had been dead set on trading for Xiao Qianqian's token. Troops grew stronger by eating grain, and premium crops packed 10 times the energy with no extra digestion time. The implications were staggering. A single soldier eating 3 meals a day gained the equivalent energy of 30 meals for anyone else. A rival lord with 10 troops gaining 3 stat points from 3 daily meals would pale in comparison to Zhang Rui's lone soldier, gaining 30 stat points from the same 3 meals. Raw numbers might hold sway on day 1, but after 2 or 3 days of consistent premium crop meals, his single unit would outmatch 10 ordinary soldiers combined. What good was sheer manpower then? Given enough time, even a humble farmer fed endless premium crops might stand toe-to-toe against ancient dragons. This territory cursed with 90% prime farmland, written off as an irreversible losing start by everyone else, was a god-tier opening. Vast premium farmlands equals endless grain equals endless premium crops equals an unstoppable army. On top of that, once he bound his official territory in the boundless void, every harvest would grant him extra tech points. If Tier 1 innovations were this broken, how absurd would Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4 tech be? Who knew? Someday he might plant an ordinary peach seed and grow a sacred immortal peach straight from the soil. Classmate Zhang Rui, if you regret this, we can swap back right now. Xiao Qianqian stepped through the back classroom door and stopped beside Zhang Rui's desk. Every pair of eyes in the room snapped onto them instantly. No need. Zhang Rui tightened his grip on the token as he replied. The artifact suddenly began shaking violently for no clear reason. It only calmed once it fully bonded to Zhang Rui and sank into his body. Right before vanishing, faint script flickered across its surface. 500 years. A full 500 years, at last. Wait, what? Where's that young lady? Panicked emoji. I will find a way to repay this favor once we enter the boundless void. Xiao Qianqian gave Zhang Rui a long, heavy look before turning to leave. Her classmates reacted in a flurry. Some shook their heads silently. Others were looks of pity. Many shot him suspicious, calculating glances. One student muttered under their breath. Do you think he found some loophole no one else saw? Quit joking. Countless lords throughout history couldn't escape that doomed farm territory penalty. What makes him special? Fair point. I just hope my territory spawns near his, heh. He could still hear their mocking jeers, loud enough to nearly drown out his resolve back then. No, drown out his cheat code, more like it. Zhang Rui ignored every word of their chatter. Please. A generic divine grace farm lord token was a death sentence for regular lords. Nothing more than a ready-made grain silo for invaders. For someone with his cheat, it was a whole different story. You build armies, seize land, fight over scarce resources. All I need to do is farm, keep planting, and eventually everything you own becomes mine. What's mine stays mine. The rules of the boundless void were brutal and simple. The weak get consumed. Back on his old world, he possessed no power to turn his wildest dreams into reality. Now, armed with an overpowered cheat, he refused to drift aimlessly through this new life. He would leverage his endless farmland to grow mountains of grain, raising an army fearsome enough to shake every lord in the void. He'd earn the freedom to do whatever he pleased and reject whatever he despised. Boom! The bell marking noon 12 rang out at that exact moment. The entire school building erupted in chaos. Screams, cheers, desperate prayers for lucky territory spawns blended together, before dozens of figures vanished from their seats one after another. Newborn Lord, welcome to Boundless Void. Human Newbie, Zone 996. Chat system loaded. Trading system loaded. Newbie grace period remaining. 2 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. During the newbie period, monster raids will commence at 6 p.m. each day. Slay monsters to receive random rewards. Once the newbie period ends, your territory will automatically border neighboring lords' lands. Territory type: farm. Level: LV.1 Population 0. Territory Facilities: Lord's Manor, Farmland, Well, Barracks. Upgrade Requirements: 10 residents, 5 unique facility types, 500 kilograms grain, 1x LV.1 Lord Core. Newbie Starter Pack claimed. Rewards received: 100 sweet potato tubers, 100 apple seeds. Indestructible iron hoe ×1, iron sickle ×1, watering can ×1. Lotus seed blessed by an unknown force ×1. Zhang Rui opened his eyes to an entirely foreign landscape. A square plot of land stretching 500 meters wide on all sides spread before him, split into uniform 1 square meter plots of rich black topsoil. At the farm's center stood a wooden manor house, a canvas military tent, and a stone well. A wooden palisade wall ringed the territory, separating the farm from an expanse of bare yellow earth beyond. Past that lay endless, pitch-black wilderness. Zhang Rui took a deep breath. This land was his new starting line from this moment onward. A cold, emotionless voice echoed in his ears. Generating personal stat panel. Lord, Zhang Rui Physique, 15 Spirit, 20 daily food processing capacity, 2 kilograms. Consuming less than 50 of your daily limit leads to fatigue. Below 25 leaves you weak. Below 10 renders you immobile. 2 consecutive days below 10 capacity causes permanent stat loss. 3 consecutive days results in death. Lord Talent, Night Owl Prodigy. Effect: all residents and facilities within your territory require 35 less rest. Note: should you perish as an LV.1 Lord, you will respawn as a level 1 Lord Core. 35% less sleep required? Wish I'd pulled all-nighters nonstop back, then instead of half-assing it. He felt little disappointment over his mediocre innate talent. Where natural talent fell short, his technology tree would fill the gap. His true advantage never rested on base talents anyway. Now that he held his own territory and enough tech points, he unlocked his first 2 innovations at once. Farm King unlocked. Abundance unlocked. He then spent 400 plus 800 tech points to max Abundance straight to level 3, boosting its minimum yield multiplier from 2x to 5x, locking it at a permanent 10x harvest boost. 300 tech points remained, exactly enough to unlock premium produce. With that, all 3 Tier 1 breakthrough technologies were fully unlocked. The next upgrade for premium produce cost 600 tech points, granting an extra 1 tech point for every 50 kilograms of premium crops harvested. Farming began with seeds. Zhang Rui opened his lord's inventory to examine the supplies from his starter pack. Farm-type territories received drastically different starter loot than all other territory variants. Most lords unlocked ores, lumber, skill tomes, or pre-built facilities in their packs. Even this divinely blessed farm territory's starter bundle held nothing but farming supplies. 100 sweet potato tubers quality. White occupies 1 farm plot each. Effect: fully mature in 2.5 hours. 0. 5 kilograms of sweet potatoes consumed grants plus 1 physique stat. 100 apple seeds quality. White occupies 1 farm plot each. Effect: fully mature in 2.5 hours. 0.5 kilograms of apples consumed grants plus 1 spirit stat. Lotus seed blessed by an unknown force quality. Unidentified occupies 4 farm plots. Effect: unknown. Matures after 72 hours of growth. Items, troops, and gear in the boundless void had no rigid tier labels, only stat variance and quality grading. From lowest to highest rank, quality tiers went: white, green, blue, purple, gold, red, pink, prismatic, black. Every tier upgrade added 1 unique bonus modifier to the crop or item. Sweet potatoes and apples were basic white tier crops with no special modifiers attached. This unidentified blessed lotus seed, however, piqued Zhang Rui's curiosity immensely. It was likely the hidden surprise the god of millet had left for Xiao Qianqian. With no way to test its effects immediately, he set the mystery seed aside for later. Right now, he lacked grain to summon farmers, and tending all these fields alone would be exhausting work. A key newbie rule: any troop recruitment from built territory facilities costs 0 grain during the grace period. His top priority was summoning his single available unit to help with labor. Zhang Rui walked toward the barracks tent. Barracks, military canvas tent quality, white recruitable troops, 1x human infantry. Standard recruitment cost: 50 kilograms of any grain, maximum occupancy, 10 people. Upgrade requirements: 50 kilograms lumber plus 2x white barracks cores or 1x green barracks core. Description: a rudimentary barracks for low-tier human soldiers. Troops may be summoned free of charge during the newbie grace period. Free troop summons were a generous newbie perk, But every extra soldier meant another mouth to feed. That was one major reason almost no one chose farm territories. Farm lords held endless land and seeds, but no troops to guard them. Other lords lacked farmland and grain, yet commanded armies. Stockpile grain while your rivals stockpile soldiers, and you're just their personal grain warehouse. Naturally, this logic did not apply to someone with a cheat code. Without hesitation, Zhang Rui summoned his only available infantry unit. My lord, a teenage boy of 18 or 19 with a resolute expression stepped out of the tent, clad in rough linen rags and gripping a spear. He planted the spear upright beside him, dropped to one knee, and bowed respectfully. Zhang Rui pulled the youth to his feet and checked his stat panel. Human troop, Li quality, white. Physique, 18 spirit, 10 daily food processing capacity, 3 kilograms. Description, an ordinary human soldier trained in spear combat. Li's stats were nothing exceptional, yet he was an extra pair of working hands regardless. Mediocre base stats were irrelevant. Zhang Rui had endless seeds and endless farmland. Once they harvested their first batch of premium crops, even a single day of feasting would make him capable of fending off 4 or 5 ordinary soldiers. As more game-changing tech unlocked, he might even grow crops that granted troops combat skills or awakened hidden talents. Come on, Li, let's get planting. Zhang Rui wasted no time and led Li out to the farm plots. Farming in the boundless void required no complicated techniques. Any seed buried in fertile soil would take root and grow. Li swung the hoe to dig rows of holes ahead, while Zhang Rui followed behind, dropping seeds and covering them with earth. He planted the blessed lotus seed first, then the sweet potato tubers one by one. Li, hold off on digging for a moment. After burying 20 sweet potato tubers, Zhang Rui called a halt. All crops here fed on ambient void energy, cutting their maturation cycles drastically short. Watering and fertilizing boosted yields and sped up growth. But pest control was far more critical. Every 10 minutes during growth cycles, swarms of pests spawned around planted seeds. Left unchecked, the vermin would devour every seed down to the root, wiping the entire harvest. Worse still, they could burrow underground and permanently ruin farm plots. They paused to catch their breath, and the first wave of pests emerged. Each bug was the size of a fist, scrabbling frantically at the dirt to consume the buried seeds. For all their bulky size, they possessed zero combat power. Zhang Rui could crush one under a single footstep. Dead pests dissolved into tiny light specks and vanished entirely. The two spent nearly 6 minutes stamping out swarms before they could rest again. Zhang Rui walked over to the well and pulled the watering can out. No cups existed in the territory yet, so he filled the can and drank straight from its spout after rinsing it clean. Here, have some water. He handed the can to Li when he returned. Thank you, my lord. The young soldier was shy and hesitated several seconds before accepting the can. For the rest of the grace period, they repeated the cycle every 10 minutes, clearing pest swarms nonstop. During their brief breaks, Zhang Rui opened the global chat channel, which buzzed with lively conversation. Damn it, I spawned with 10 pig-headed monsters right off the bat. Each day they eat at least 20 caddies of grain. How the hell am I supposed to feed them? Anyone selling grain? Anyone selling grain? I've got veins in my territory. I'll trade minerals for food. Timber for grain. Timber for grain. 50 units of lumber for just 10 caddies of grain. Quit yelling already. We've barely started. No one's got surplus stock. Ha ha, I got an undead barracks out of my newbie starter pack. They don't need sleep, and they don't eat either. Jealous. Plus 10,086, breaking the repeat spam. Quick question. My zombie units start with 200 vitality and can't eat anything. How do I level them up? You can gain void energy and grow stronger by slaying monsters too. You're missing his point. He's just flexing his 200 vitality zombie troops. Speaking of which, did anyone bind the Farmer Lord token this year? Is that rumor real? It's legit. I was planning to beg him for some grain, huh? I hope my territory spawns right next to his. Nearly 20 million new lords from the Yanhuang Nation on Blue Star populate Novice Zone number 996. With such a massive crowd, the chat feed is flooded with non-stop messages. Zhang Rui skimmed through the channel. Most posts revolved around people scrambling to find food. Word had spread among his classmates the second he bound the rare, once-in-a-century Farmer Lord token. So plenty of users in the chat begged to spawn adjacent to his territory. Once the 3-day newbie protection period ended, they planned to hit him up to borrow grain. Borrow grain. Zhang Rui glanced at his agricultural tech tree, then eyed the sweet potato crop set to harvest in 1 hour. A thought crossed his mind. I wish I could borrow all of your Lord cores to upgrade my territory and expand my farmlands instead. Every Lord's chat messages display their unique ID number. He silently jotted down the IDs of all those scheming to mooch food off him. 1 hour later, growl. Constant physical exertion left Li Yi's stomach rumbling loudly. The youth's face flushed red with embarrassment. Zhang Rui smiled faintly, locking eyes on the system pop-up hovering over the farm fields. Crop, sweet potatoes, ready for harvest. Let's see how much we get from this batch. Harvest time always brought joy. A harvest boosted by black tech blessings brought overwhelming delight, pure elation, unbridled joy, utter bliss. Gained 160 caddies regular sweet potatoes, 40 caddies premium sweet potatoes. Regular sweet potato, consuming 1 caddy grants 1 vitality after digestion. Premium sweet potato, consuming 1 caddy grants 10 vitality after digestion. Abundant harvest proc activated, bonus 1600 caddies regular sweet potatoes. Premium crops do not receive the abundant harvest multiplier. Gain tech points, 1.64. Once the two finished digging every tuber and laid eyes on the mountain of sweet potatoes, Li Yi's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. He muttered in shock. Is this a miracle? Crop yield rules in the boundless void are nothing like the real world. Here's how it works. Ordinary farmland, roughly 3 caddies yield per unit of seed. High-quality farmland, 5 caddies yield per unit of seed. Top-tier farmland, stable 10 caddies yield without fertilizer. But Zhang Rui possessed the abundant harvest black tech, which multiplied all yields tenfold. From just 20 sweet potato seed tubers, his first harvest brought 1,600 caddies regular sweet potatoes and 40 caddies premium sweet potatoes. We'll never finish eating all this, not even close. Zhang Rui ran a quick mental calculation. He and Li Yi could eat a maximum of 10 caddies of premium sweet potatoes per day, enough to last 4 full days. He still held 80 more sweet potato tubers in his inventory. Based on the premium crop ratio from this harvest, the next yield would net roughly 160 caddies of premium produce, enough for the two of them for 20 days. Not to mention his apple seeds, plus more seeds he could acquire later to keep planting premium crops endlessly. There was simply far more food than they could ever consume. Li Yi stood frozen staring at the towering pile of tubers, as if paralyzed by a pressure point strike. Before becoming a unit, he'd starved to death in another world. A celestial master had given him blessed kanji, a thin porridge dotted with beans and rice, and that was what bound him into Zhang Rui's service. He knew exactly what grain meant for survival. Watching his lord churn out such an enormous food supply in such a short time, only one word filled Li Yi's gaze. Loyalty. Here. Zhang Rui handed him a washed premium sweet potato. Seeing Li Yi still stunned, he chuckled. Eat your fill. Pick the nicest looking ones. Eat as much as you want. Thank you, Lord. Li Yi took the tuber with both hands, his arms trembling. He had no words to express his gratitude and immediately dug in, taking huge bites. Human units really are such earnest, loyal creatures, Zhang Rui thought to himself. The sentiment was well-founded. The boundless void had a universal rule. All units and heroes recruited via a lord's territory facilities hold baseline loyalty. They would never betray or murder their lord, but their devotion would never be absolute. If you withhold meat from carnivorous troops long enough, they'll slack off on all work. If you refuse to feed gemstones to dragons, they'll pretend not to spot incoming enemies. Human units were a different story entirely. They were unfussy, with minimal demands. Feed them, clothe them, shelter them, and they'd lay down their lives for you without hesitation. Now that he had seeds, fertile land, and mountains of grain, it was time to scale up agriculture. Zhang Rui silently channeled the power of his farm king tech. 100 caddies of sweet potatoes vanished from his inventory. 10 figures stepped out from the barracks building, clad in rough linen tunics, each gripping a hoe or sickle. Farmer unit grade, common vitality, 12 spirit, 9 max daily food consumption. For caddies description, ordinary farmers capable of tending 10 farm plots apiece. Everyone, plant these seeds first. Li Yi, once you're full, come help out. Work it off to aid digestion. After distributing all the seeds, Zhang Rui washed a premium sweet potato and bit into it. It tasted surprisingly good. Crisp, sweet, and juicy, almost like biting into an apple. It's such a hassle that crops from this wretched realm can't produce viable seeds on their own, Zhang Rui sighed. He stared at the 80 apple seeds remaining in his bag. This was another quirk of the boundless void. Special talents or skills were required to make crops bear reusable seeds. The next tier of agricultural black tech remained shrouded in mist. He would need to max out premium yield to unlock it. Only 4 methods existed to obtain more seeds. Explore undeveloped territory or land clearing. Loot drops from slain monsters. Raid other lords' lands. Purchase seeds from other players. His blessed lord territory held 0 unexplored zones, so option 1 was off the table. Monster drops were random, and seeds had a low spawn rate. Option 2 was unreliable. Newbie protection shielded all territories from border clashes, eliminating option 3. That left only one viable path: buying seeds. Other lords only harvested 3 to 5 caddies of grain per seed unit, but Zhang Rui's abundant harvest tech let him yield up to 100 caddies without premium bonuses. He could buy seeds using just 3 caddies of grain, profiting massively from the markup, while other lords saved themselves the trouble of farming. Win-win for both sides. Zhang Rui immediately pulled up the trade hub. Wolf pelt, price, 10 caddies grain bone blade, price, 20 caddies grain goblin mace, price, 30 caddies grain. Only 2 hours had passed since everyone arrived in the boundless void, yet countless lords had fully scouted their starting lands. Some discovered outposts, others encountered wild beasts and monsters. Many looted weapons and rare resources. One universal truth stood out. Right now, grain was the most sought-after trade commodity by far, above all else. Zhang Rui had more grain than he knew what to do with. He instantly searched the marketplace for seed listings. 10 units corn seeds, price, 35 caddies, any grain cheap, buy it outright. 10 units sweet potato tubers, price, 36 caddies, any grain, I've got plenty of grain, purchase immediately. 1 unit potato tuber, price, 10 caddies, any grain, are you kidding me? Even top-tier farmland only yields 10 caddies of potatoes per unit seed. Other sellers offer better rates. I'm not paying that premium. Skip this listing. Having piles of grain to spend is such an amazing feeling. After spending a while browsing trades, Zhang Rui emptied all 1,600 caddies of regular sweet potatoes. In exchange, he acquired roughly 200 staple crop seeds and 100 fruit and vegetable seeds. He also picked up a full suit of armor, a bow, flint and steel, and a set of cooking pots. The armor was for Li Yi. The extra weight would burn calories faster to speed up food digestion, while also boosting his damage resistance in combat. He reserved the bow for himself. At school, Zhang Rui had studied exhaustive knowledge of the boundless void, alongside horseback riding and archery. Practicing marksmanship burned energy to aid digestion, and the bow let him strike enemies from a distance. The flint and cookware were self-explanatory. Sweet potatoes could be eaten raw, but corn and other crops were far less palatable uncooked. Li Yi. Zhang Rui waved him over and handed the armor set. Lord, your life is far more valuable than mine. Quit dawdling. Put it on. Zhang Rui cut him off sharply. As the Lord, Li Yi was obligated to charge into danger first. The armor would give him a critical defensive edge. Besides, Zhang Rui planned to equip something far finer, gold-threaded soft silk armor, when the chance arose. He had no interest in this ugly, heavy armor. Clothes truly make the man. Li Yi had soft, delicate features, but once he strapped on the bloodied armor, his entire aura shifted dramatically. Get back to work. Zhang Rui clapped him on the shoulder. 2 hours later gained 5,800 caddies regular sweet potatoes, 1,500 caddies regular apples, 200 units timber apple trees gained, 220 caddies premium sweet potatoes, 50 caddies premium apples. Regular apple, consuming 1 caddy grants 1 spirit after digestion. Premium apple, consuming 1 caddy grants 10 spirit after digestion. Gained tech points, 7.57 current tech points, 9.21. The second harvest was equally satisfying. With a full workforce and stockpile of seeds, Zhang Rui assigned another batch to the 11 workers to plant and tend. As for himself, every other lord was starving, so grain functioned as universal currency. He might as well hunt for bargains in the trade hub. Half an hour later, Zhang Rui returned. He hauled a massive load of seeds, cloth bedding, and saplings. His labor force was still insufficient, leaving vast swathes of fertile black soil unused. Planting saplings now would let him harvest timber once they matured, far more cost-effective than trading grain directly for lumber. Timber was a fundamental resource he would constantly require. Willow and poplar saplings bore no fruit and attracted no pests, requiring minimal upkeep without disrupting farm work. Li Yi, come help me unload. Zhang Rui called across the fields. Li Yi dropped his digging task and jogged over, carting the saplings to the edge of the farmland. They followed the same simple routine: dig a hole, plant the sapling, move on. By this point, Li Yi had digested roughly 60% of the 2 caddies of premium sweet potatoes he'd eaten earlier. Vitality, 1830, a full 12 stat points gained before finishing digestion. His boosted strength made it hard to control his digging force. He stared blankly at the hole he'd just carved. His slight exertion had driven the entire hoe head deep underground, along with the handle. His bashful, confused expression made Zhang Rui chuckle. Beneath the amusement, excitement surged through him. That massive stat boost from a half-digested meal? He could eat 3 full meals daily, consuming 6 caddies of premium produce, for a total of 60 stat points every single day. 60 per day, 120 after 2 days, 180 after 3 days. This was the power of the agricultural tech tree. This was the tenfold energy bonus of premium crops. Other lords envied undead units that skipped meals. He had endless mountains of food. People bragged about zombie units with 200 base vitality. His soldiers only needed 2 extra days of hearty meals to easily surpass them. And this was only the beginning. Zhang Rui turned his gaze to the 10 farmers. With his endless supply of premium crops, even ordinary farmers could grow strong enough to slay dragons, if they ate enough and survived long enough. Chat channel. Guys, has anyone fully scouted their territory yet? Shouldn't we prioritize farming, mining, and logging to stockpile resources first? No rush to explore the whole map. Haha. If you skip land clearing first, guess what'll happen to all the hidden treasures in uncharted zones when monsters spawn? Shit, I panicked and forgot about that. What do I do now? It's only day 1, monster spawns are light. Clear land and fight mobs at the same time. No need to panic, just wipe them out. Attached video clip. Video footage. 2 zombies effortlessly slaughter over 30 wolves, while 3 more zombies guard a small-statured man. Quit showing off, will you? 200 vitality stats, 5 zombies total. Great lord, take me under your wing. Ugh, he never stops flexing. Zhang Rui watched the zombie lord endlessly boast about his undead army, thinking the guy loved fishing for attention. He'd caught a big fish and couldn't stop telling everyone, ignoring all other tasks. He checked the system clock display. Time, 5:40 p.m. The first monster invasion would strike in 20 minutes. The boundless void contained countless civilizations of every description. No monster or treasure spawn was out of the ordinary here. Even within the newbie trial zone, Zhang Rui dared not grow complacent. Void fundamental law. The more grain and resources a territory holds, the more numerous and powerful the monsters drawn to its scent. Other lords barely had any supplies on day 1, but he was overflowing with food. Even after trading away a large portion, his stockpile remained massive. His premium sweet potatoes and apples emitted an even stronger lure to monsters than ordinary crops. To play it safe, Zhang Rui returned to the trade hub and spent grain purchasing iron arrowheads, shields, spears, and blades. The arrows turned him into a high-damage ranged attacker to boost his firepower. He handed swords and shields to the farmers to give them a fighting chance. Meanwhile, he passed out freshly roasted premium sweet potatoes to Li Yi and the workers, ordering them to eat while patrolling. Digesting crop energy took time, and combat accelerated the process dramatically. If their stats surged mid-fight, they could turn the tide against overwhelming monster numbers. All preparations complete. Still chewing roasted sweet potato, Zhang Rui walked calmly to his lord's manor, a tiny wooden cabin. The furnishings inside were extremely sparse. Only a bed, a table, and a kerosene lamp. He stood by the window, watching the 10 farmers tending the crops. Beside him, Li Yi stuffed roasted tubers into his mouth, eyes fixed unblinkingly on the dark wilderness beyond the territory fence. Time ticked away second by second. Thud. Movement. Zhang Rui possessed sharp hearing and instantly pinpointed the sound's origin. He peered out. 3 monsters stood on the unclaimed land outside his wooden fence. They hunched over, green-skinned, wielding crude maces. Gob. Gob. The creatures stood only 1.2 meters tall, far too short to scale the 1.5-meter fence. They repeatedly slammed their maces against the wooden barrier. The frail timber shook violently under each blow. A few more strikes would splinter it completely. Li Yi, move in and stab them dead. Goblins were one of the most basic monsters in the boundless void, with stats comparable to an average adult human. Li Yi, with 30 vitality, full armor, and a spear, could dispatch them effortlessly. Even a single-armed farmer stood a fighting chance against them. After monsters die, the void energy within their bodies is absorbed by the killer to boost their stats. Zhang Rui decided not to fight personally for now, planning to train Li Yi up first. Gob. Gob. Seeing Li Yi charging over, the 3 goblins grew even more frenzied. They swung their spiked clubs faster, eager to break through the fence and feast. As the old saying goes, Reach longer, strike stronger. The spear in Li Yi's hand stretched a full 2 meters. He needed no refined combat techniques. He only had to stab through the gaps. Squelch. One goblin's head was pierced straight through. Green blood splattered everywhere, stunning the other two for a split second. Enraged, they smashed their spiked clubs down at the spear. Bang! The two clubs collided midair. Li Yi boasted superior stats and swifter reflexes. He retracted his spear, thrust, pulled back, and struck again in seamless succession. 3 thrusts, 3 kills. Fast, precise, ruthless. The 3 goblins collapsed to the ground. Their corpses vanished instantly, dissolving into 3 wispy orbs of white energy that flowed into Li Yi's body. His physique stat rose by 0.5, and his spirit stat by 0.1. 3 system alerts chimed in Zhang Rui's ears. Goblin slain. Loot obtained. Spiked club. Goblin slain. Loot obtained. 100G rendered pork cracklings. Goblin slain. Loot obtained. 10 pumpkin seeds. The haul was decent. Spiked club. Common white tier weapon with no bonus stats. Rendered pork cracklings. Meat ration. Restores stamina rapidly when consumed. Grants a tiny physique boost and amplifies explosive strength. Pumpkin seeds. Pumpkins grown from these count as vegetables. Eating them raises spirit stat, improves muscle coordination and nerve transmission. This crop lets troops master the extra strength from physique upgrades, preventing the loss of control Li Yi experienced after his last stat surge. After a quick glance at the loot, Zhang Rui did not let his guard down. Normally, a system notification would trigger once the beginner wave of monster incursions ended. No alert had popped up yet, meaning these 3 goblins were merely vanguard scouts. Sure enough, Li Yi and Zhang Rui watched as shadows stirred in the darkness, something drawing near. Zhang Rui's hackles rose. He felt as if a horrifying presence was staring them down. Clomp, clomp, clomp. A strange, heavy footfall echoed, and the monsters emerged into view. 15 or 6 in total. Most were ordinary goblins wielding spiked clubs, identical to the ones they'd just fought. One stood out at the front of the horde, charging ahead of the rest. This goblin towered over its kin, clutching a machete, mounted atop a black wolf the size of a fully grown tiger. Goblin Wolf Rider tier, green physique, 40 goblin plus 40 black wolf spirit, 20 plus 5 skills, backstab, tackle. Backstab deals drastically increased damage when attacking enemies from the flank or rear. Tackle. The black wolf can knock down targets with lower physique, stunning them. Cooldown, 10 seconds. For troops and monsters alike, tier rank hinges entirely on skills. 1 skill equals green tier. 2 skills equals blue tier. Take this Goblin Wolf Rider for example. Its base stats were unremarkable, yet it qualified as a green tier monster solely for its skills. It held a massive advantage in fights against foes with matching raw stats. Worse still, this enemy cheated the system. Both the Goblin Rider and its wolf mount each possessed a unique skill, fused into a single combat unit. Faced with such a threat, Zhang Rui tensed completely, daring not to overlook any danger. 15 regular goblins plus a green tier wolf rider. This battle would be brutal. Fiefs built for farming were notoriously deadly to manage. Other farmers lacked ample crop yields and only commanded a single soldier, leaving them helpless against monster swarms. Zhang Rui had unlocked agricultural tech trees and harvested plenty of grain, yet a dozen monsters had descended on his land. And this was still the beginner phase. How could a green tier monster spawn already? Could they win? Zhang Rui had no time to ponder. Li Yi, watch out for the wolf's tackle. He shouted the warning, drew his bow to full tension, and released. An iron-tipped arrow streaked forth, piercing one goblin's shoulder. Logic dictated he target the rider first, cut off the head of the snake. But his archery skill was not sharp enough for that shot. The goblin wolf rider urged its mount into a leap, clearing the fence effortlessly and lunging straight for Li Yi. Aiming for the rider risked friendly fire. The rider fixated on Li Yi the instant it breached the fief. To its eyes, this human prey posed the greatest threat and tasted the most tempting. Crash! Li Yi dodged the wolf's pounce by twisting aside, only to take a machete slash across his arm from the goblin rider. Without his armor, his current physique would never have withstood the metal blade. As it stood, he only stumbled backward from the blow. Gob! The goblin wolf rider bared its fangs in a grin. It could tell the human would not hold out much longer. Everyone else, eliminate the regular goblins first. Zhang Rui knew Li Yi could not defeat the wolf rider alone. Still, they had to wipe out the lesser goblins first. If the horde broke through the fence and surrounded them, all would be lost. Following his order, the farmers charged forward armed with shields, sickles, and crude cleavers. These folk only wanted to tend their fields in peace. But anyone who threatened their livelihoods would be buried in those very fields. The 10 farmers formed a tight battle formation, shields forward, sickles poised behind, pinning the goblins at the fence gap so they could neither advance nor retreat. The situation unfolded far better than Zhang Rui had anticipated. Relieved, he refocused on Li Yi's 1-on-2 duel. Li Yi was clearly outmatched. The wolf snapped its jaws, the rider hacked with its blade, and clangorous metal clashes rang out non-stop against his armor. Physique governed not just strength, but speed as well. Li Yi's lower physique left him sluggish. The wolf seized an opening and tackled him flat to the ground. Slobber-drenched fangs and the rider's machete descended toward him at once. He could only jam his spear shaft upward to block the wolf's bite. Just then, whoosh! An arrow grazed the black wolf's scalp and buried itself in the rider's thigh. The wolf flinched instinctively, and the goblin atop it shuddered in searing pain. That split-second lapse in strength gave Li Yi the opening he needed to break free. He heaved the heavy wolf off his body and drove his spear hard toward the rider. The goblin wolf rider panicked, desperate to check its wounded leg, but survival came first. Its superior physique granted lightning-fast reflexes, and it swatted the spear thrust aside with its machete. It prepared to command the wolf into another tackle. Li Yi had already retreated to a safe distance, refusing to engage recklessly. Whoosh! Zhang Rui loosed another arrow from his bow, striking the rider's shoulder. Gob! The wolf rider flew into a rage. It wheeled around, ready to charge straight for Zhang Rui. Your opponent is me. Li Yi wiped blood from his lip, feeling stronger than he ever had before. He raised his spear and charged back into combat. The rider halted the wolf, sweeping its machete horizontally, and the two clashed once more. Thus the fight dragged on. Li Yi and Zhang Rui fighting in tandem against the paired wolf and goblin, exchanging dozens of blows. First minute, the wolf rider maintained the upper hand. Li Yi relied on hit-and-run tactics with Zhang Rui's arrow support, and their ammunition dwindled rapidly. Second minute, Li Yi's raw strength nearly matched the rider's. Third minute, arrows ran dry entirely. Boom. When the wolf lunged again, Li Yi evaded with effortless ease. The rider's machete swung down, but Li Yi parried the blow with a horizontal spear sweep, even knocking the monster backward. Confusion flickered across the goblin wolf rider's face. It could not comprehend what was happening. How had this human grown so powerful in such a short span? It circled to Li Yi's flank, yet Li Yi's reaction speed had sharpened drastically. He spun and swept his spear, forcing the rider back once more. As the battle raged on, Li Yi's spear felt lighter in his grip, and the wolf rider's movements seemed to slow. The high-quality sweet potatoes he'd stuffed down before the fight were still digesting, steadily boosting his physique stat. Physique, 43.5. Zhang Rui glanced at Li Yi's stat panel and relaxed slightly. His last-minute pre-battle feeding had been the right call. Gob! While Li Yi fought with renewed vigor, the wolf rider felt its stamina draining away fast. It roared, slapped its wolf mount, and launched another ferocious pounce at Li Yi. This time, Li Yi did not step back. He gripped his spear single-handed, sank his weight low, and watched the black wolf lunge open-jawed toward him. He took a single step forward and drove his spear home. The blade pierced straight through the wolf's throat, the momentum unbroken as it impaled the goblin rider through the chest. One thrust, 2 kills. The goblin wolf rider froze mid-leap, thick green blood streaming down the spear shaft onto the dirt. Li Yi pulled his spear free, and the wolf and rider collapsed to the ground as one. Lord, I have fulfilled my duty. He turned to Zhang Rui and clasped his fist in salute. Zhang Rui gave him a thumbs up, then glanced toward the other side of the battlefield. The 10 farmers had already finished off the remaining goblins and were busy working the farmland. At that moment, the system alert sounded. First wave of monster incursion cleared. Second wave will arrive tomorrow at 1800 hours. Zhang Rui finally exhaled in relief. Truly, starting a farm fief was hell mode difficulty. Even with his agricultural tech tree, this victory had been hard-won. If Li Yi hadn't gorged on high-grade sweet potatoes pre-battle, rapidly digesting them mid-fight to catch up on physique stats, the outcome would have been uncertain. Worse, Zhang Rui had exhausted every arrow in his quiver. Combat mode blocked all trade with other lords via the market hub. Still, once today ends, better days await us. Zhang Rui gazed across the sprawling farmland at the ripening new crop batches. With abundant premium crops as their supply line, all 12 of them would hit a physique stat of 50 or higher by tomorrow evening. A single wolf rider meant nothing. Even 3 or 5 could be eliminated without struggle. Pulling his thoughts back to the present, he checked the loot notifications from the 16 slain monsters. Goblin slain. Loot obtained. X5 spiked clubs, X2 bone meal, X40 stone, X30 timber, X10 soybean seeds. Goblin wolf rider slain. Loot obtained. Backstab skill tome, barracks kennel. A flood of notifications filled Zhang Rui's lord inventory with new items. Fertilizer, a skill tome, a new barrack structure. Our luck's solid. Zhang Rui felt a surge of excitement, though it felt well-deserved. All laws of the endless void boiled down to 4 simple words: equivalent exchange. The richer a fief's resources, the more numerous and powerful the invading monsters. The weaker the lord, and the stronger the foes they slay, the richer the rewards they earn. Tonight's battle had been a classic underdog victory, outnumbered and outmatched, yet triumphant. The generous loot was only fitting. The spiked clubs, ox bones, stone, and timber were trivial materials. Bone meal was a white-tier fertilizer. Effect: reduces crop maturation time by 1 hour upon application. Cannot stack repeated fertilization. Without hesitation, Zhang Rui scattered the powder over the plot sown with blessed lotus root seeds. Next, he pulled out the skill tome. Skill tome, backstab effect. Upon use, a troop or hero unit enters an enlightenment realm to learn the backstab skill. Time dilation ratio, 2:1. Skill tomes in the endless void could not be activated by simply crushing them. When used, the target unit's consciousness entered a mysterious realm guided by the system. Time flowed at different speeds based on the skill's complexity. For a relatively simple skill like backstab, 2 hours inside the realm equaled 1 hour in the outside world. Zhang Rui struggled to recall the textbook term for the phenomenon, but he grasped the core logic. A mage wielding a staff could never master bullet-curving gun techniques, for example. Backstab carried no such restrictions, any unit could learn it. After dinner, we'll use this tome. Zhang Rui called Li Yi over and handed him the book. Understood, Lord. Li Yi voiced no refusal this time. The brutal fight had laid bare how much room he had to grow. Only by growing stronger could he better protect his lord. With that settled, Zhang Rui retrieved the kennel, a miniature building model. He tossed it beside the barracks tent. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The model flew from his hand and swelled rapidly, morphing into a small 3 by 3 meter hut standing next to the canvas barracks. Barracks, kennel tier, white recruitable troop, X1 blackback warhound recruitment cost, 50 gene of any grain. Upgrade requirements: X100 timber plus X2 white tier barracks cores, or X1 green tier barracks core. Description: a basic barracks structure for canine combat units. Come forth, Bruce. Woof woof. A fully grown blackback hound with a muscular frame and 70 centimeter shoulder height burst out of the kennel. It circled Zhang Rui, wagging its tail eagerly. Beast folk troop, Bruce Dodo tier, white physique, 28 spirit, 5 daily maximum food consumption, 3 gene. Description: a clever, loyal, highly vigilant standard beast folk soldier. Dodo's base physique was noticeably higher than Li Yi's, yet that did not guarantee victory in a duel. Humans held an edge not in brute strength, but tool mastery and flexible combat tactics. Bruce Dodo, fancy foreign name. Zhang Rui knelt to scratch the dog's thick black fur. Go run around. I'll fix everyone's supper. He patted its head, and Dodo dived off toward the farm fields. Zhang Rui stood and fetched pots, pans, and bowls to a vacant clearing. He stacked stones into a crude stove, stuffed in timber, lit a fire with flint, filled an iron pot with water, chopped chunks of premium sweet potato, and covered it to simmer. He repeated the process for 2 more pots, moving with fluid, practiced motions. He filled a wooden bucket with premium apples, crushed them with a hammer, and pressed out fresh juice. As the saying goes, top-tier ingredients require only the simplest cooking methods. This would be their evening meal. All 12 of them had stuffed themselves on sweet potatoes before the night battle, leaving little room in their stomachs. They could not force down more staple food, but soup and apple juice would settle fine. By the time he finished cooking, the clock struck 6:30, and dusk cloaked the land. The system alert chimed again. Current time, 18:30. Endless void has entered night mode. All fief facility efficiency reduced, troop digestion rate slowed. The endless void was a realm of wild fantasy, yet it operated by rigid, logical rules. In the mortal world, human digestion shifted into a low-power state after dark, slowing food breakdown. The same rule applied here. Troops digested nutrients slower, and crops absorbed void energy from the soil at a diminished rate. This barely affected premium farmland, however. It drew void energy at an extremely high efficiency and stored massive reserves within its soil. Crops could keep growing overnight off the stored energy alone. Unfortunately, the 10 farmers needed rest. Even with a talent that cut sleep demand by 35, all residents still required their regular rest to avoid plummeting work efficiency the next day. Shortly afterward, the third batch of planted crops finished ripening. Harvest gained 5,700 gene common corn, 1,800 gene common potatoes. Harvest gained 230 gene premium corn, 120 gene premium potatoes. Tech points acquired 7.85 current tech points, 17.06. Great luck! From 30 potato tubers with a mere 30 premium crop spawn rate, he'd reaped a full 120 gene of premium potatoes. That counted as incredible fortune. A smile tugged at Zhang Rui's lips as he ordered everyone to haul the massive crop yields to the Lord's manor. The labor would aid digestion after their heavy meal, and the surplus grain would subtly boost their loyalty. Zhang Rui skipped the group dinner to avoid making the others uncomfortable. He half reclined on the wooden bed in his manor, sipping sweet potato porridge while scrolling through the global chat channel for entertainment. I'm starving. I haven't eaten all day. Does anyone have spare food to share? Damn it. A full 1,000 square meters of territory, not a drop of water, not a crumb of food. What rotten luck I've got. Heh, you don't know what it's like being a desert lord. Scorching hot by day, freezing cold by night. Even if you had seeds, you couldn't grow a single crop. All right. We're lucky just to still be alive. Plenty of lords didn't even survive the first monster wave. Tell me about it. That girl I was chatting with said she'd head out to explore her territory this afternoon. Haven't heard a word from her since. She's probably dead, sigh. Man, zombies have it good. No need to eat. No rest at night. Though it doesn't help much right now anyway. Hurry up and in the newbie phase. I'd give anything to be friends with that blessed farmer lord. I doubt he's still kicking. Only one unit under his command. How's he supposed to hold off the night monster raids? Silence hung in the chat. Night fell, and most lords lingered in the global chat channel. Only the zombie lord kept popping in every now and then to show off. The screen flooded with complaints of empty grain and water stores. It made perfect sense. Official data showed that unless you drew an abysmal starting roll, every lord's initial barracks would spawn green tier, sometimes even blue tier quality. These barracks came with special perks. They offered a unique skill, or the right to recruit 5, even 10 free units during the newbie period. With that numerical advantage, monster incursions were nothing to fear. But without seeds or grain, feeding those troops each day drained their reserves dry. This was only the first night. By day 2, Day 3, food shortages would spiral out of control, and their desperation would only grow. For Zhang Rui, however, he glanced at the piles of grain and premium crops stacked halfway up his walls, then looked out at Li Yi and the others slurping soup heartily. Duo, over here. Zhang Rui called, holding out the half-eaten apple. A stark contrast. While everyone starved with empty larders, he had more grain than he could even toss to the hounds. The night air turned cool as dusk settled. Ahem. Darkness deepened. Full and warm, Li Yi breathed in the cool night air, wrapped in a profound sense of safety. Vast farmland stretched out, endless food at his disposal, luxuries he'd never dared dream of in his past life. He hefted his spear and patrolled the territory perimeter with Duo, flanking him left and right. Inside the Lord's manor, Zhang Rui lay on his bed scrolling through the trade hub. He stared at countless tempting listings, hesitated, then closed the interface. Tempting as the trades were, grain was an inflation-proof universal currency. Demand would only skyrocket. He could turn a quick profit trading tonight, but if he waited until day 2 or 3, trading grain would net him far greater gains. Having made up his mind, Zhang Rui stepped outside to assign overnight farming tasks. To keep planting schedules steady tomorrow, he'd sow 150 seeds tonight split across 3 batches. 10 farmers split into 2 shifts would take turns guarding the fields. 2 of you, carry these quilts out. Don't catch a chill tonight. He handed out the bedding he'd purchased before returning to the manor. The night passed without incident, save for 3 system chimes alerting him to ripe harvests. Next morning, your unit Li Yi has learned backstab and unlocked 2 skills. Turnaround thrust, sweep all foes. Turnaround thrust, stab backward sharply, greatly boosting critical weak point hit chance with piercing damage. Cooldown, 5 seconds. Sweep all foes. Swing your spear to knock back all enemies within range. Cooldown, 10 seconds. Holy hell. Half asleep and groggy, Zhang Rui jolted wide awake the second he read the system notification. He recalled his old teacher's lesson. Exceptionally talented hero units can draw deeper insights from skill books, amplifying their abilities or unlocking additional combat arts. But neither textbooks nor his instructor had ever mentioned regular basic units could pull off the same feat. Now Li Yi, his plain, unrefined human foot soldier, had somehow deciphered two devastating spear techniques just from a single backstab skill tome. Is this the trade-off for a blessed territory only spawning one starting unit? That single recruit carries the latent potential to become a hero. Whatever the reason, Zhang Rui threw back his covers and rushed outside. Farmers had stacked freshly harvested crops in the corner and planted new seed batches. Bruce Duo darted across the fields, rooting out pests. Li Yi practiced spear drills in the open yard. Suddenly he spun, unleashing turnaround thrust. A faint glint flashed along the spear tip, piercing straight through the training boulder behind him. Zhang Rui pulled up Li Yi's stat panel. Human infantry. Li Yi, tier, blue. Physique, 68.5, spirit, 20.4. Skills, turnaround thrust, sweep all foes. Daily max food consumption, 18 gene. Description, an elite soldier proficient in 2 masterful spear stances. Tier upgrades do not directly boost base stats. Li Yi's gains stemmed from yesterday's hearty meals and monster kills. The true benefit of tier advancement lay in his higher daily food tolerance. For lords starving for grain, this was a crippling burden, but for Zhang Rui, drowning in surplus produce, it was perfect. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Zhang Rui grinned from ear to ear, repeating himself 3 times over. The surprise had come out of nowhere. My lord. Li Yi hurried over, face glowing with excitement. He opened and shut his mouth repeatedly, struggling to voice his joy. Zhang Rui clapped him on the shoulder, showering him with endless praise until the young soldier's cheeks burned bright red. How did you manage to unlock 2 skills at once? Zhang Rui asked. Li Yi gestured toward the lotus field blessed by an unknown divine force. I don't know myself. Last night, something there drew me in. I used the skill book beside it, and somehow mastered both arts out of nowhere. Zhang Rui stared at the lotus plot for ages, finding no visible anomalies. Its panel still read 52 hours until full ripening, same as before. It was a win regardless. He'd stop overthinking the cause. No time to prepare an elaborate breakfast. Roasted potatoes, corn, and sweet potatoes would suffice. A lavish feast was in order at noon to celebrate Li Yi's breakthrough. After breakfast, Zhang Rui set to work. He traded grain for essential tools and supplies. Wheat and corn kernels were milled into flour, fermented, and hand-pulled into fresh noodles. He filled a giant cauldron with water, tossing in beef bones and a full rack of seasonings to simmer broth. By noon, Li Yi and the others each clutched giant bowls, eating with ravenous delight. Springy noodles soaked in rich beef bone soup filled every vessel. Zhang Rui sat with his own oversized bowl, slurping loudly. Crops flourished in the surrounding fields, malt scent drifting on the breeze. A large black hound trotted through the farmland, gnawing on a leftover bone. The peaceful scene felt idyllic beyond words. Day 2 slipped by amid feasts and fruitful harvests. At 6 p.m. sharp, the system alert chimed. All newbie lords, prepare for the monster incursion. Footsteps echoed out of the pitch-black wilderness beyond the territory borders. Zhang Rui, mid-prep for dinner, twisted to watch dozens of shadowy figures surge forward, nearly 30 monsters in total. 5 wolf-riding goblins brandishing cleavers led the charge, followed by a horde of ordinary goblins. Cavalry paired with infantry, more than double the foes from yesterday. Their numbers looked intimidating. Li Yi, move out. As you command. Fueled by a full day of heavy meals, Li Yi's physique stat neared 150. He charged forward instantly. Gob, gob. The 5 wolf riders bore down side by side. Their black wolves huffed, scraping claws against the dirt, while the goblins atop them raised cleavers and howled as they charged. Scores of green-skinned minions yelped and trailed behind, forming a sickly green mass. Fearless, Li Yi strode straight to meet them. When 10 paces separated the two sides, the lead wolf pushed off its hind legs and pounced, jaws gaping to sink its teeth into Li Yi's skull. The goblin rider swung its cleaver downward in tandem. Li Yi's counter was seamless. He slid low beneath the wolf's belly, driving his spear straight through the beast. The tip pierced the goblin's chin and burst out the back of its skull. With a sharp twist of his wrist, he swept the spear sideways, hurling the impaled corpse flying. The entire exchange lasted a split second. Insane. Zhang Rui watched transfixed, utterly blown away by Li Yi's breathtaking prowess. A second wolf rider closed in, cleaver slashing down with a shrill whistle. Li Yi raised his spear one-handed to block. A deafening clang of metal rang out. The brutal recoil split the goblin's palm wide open, sending its blade flying yards away. Li Yi pressed forward, shoving the wolf's head into the dirt with one hand before stabbing its rider through the torso. The third and fourth wolf riders struck simultaneously, flanking him left and right. Li Yi advanced instead of retreating, spinning his spear in a full circle. Sweep all foes. The spear carved a wide arc through the air. Both black wolves were sent flying backward, crashing into the goblin horde and knocking several minions flat. Li Yi easily finished the dismounted riders sprawled on the ground. The fifth wolf rider saw its comrades fall and circled behind Li Yi to strike from stealth. Without turning his head, Li Yi drove his spear backward, twisting his torso as he thrust. Turn around, thrust. The goblin had barely settled into its ambush stance when the spear tip pierced its chest. It died instantly before it could react. Li Yi wrenched his spear free. The corpse dissolved into streams of light. The riderless black wolf whimpered and tried to flee, but Li Yi caught it in 2 strides and ran it through. The remaining 24 regular goblins rushed forward, each falling to a single spear strike. Stab, jab, sweep, slash. Li Yi's movements were crisp and economical, no wasted motion. Some goblins took spear strikes to the neck, heads lolling limply. Others were tossed skyward, lifeless before they hit the ground. 3 tried to attack from separate angles at once. Li Yi dropped into a half-crouch and spun, his spear slicing their throats in one fluid arc. The 3 goblins collapsed in a neat pile. The entire battle wrapped in under 5 minutes. The battlefield cleared of all hostiles. White light wrapped around the young warrior. He stood tall, planted his spear firmly in the dirt, and turned to face Zhang Rui. My lord, the enemy is defeated. Zhang Rui's mind flashed a line. One man holding the pass, 10,000 cannot break through. Only yesterday, Li Yi had needed his assistance to fend off a single wolf rider, forced to wait for digested food to boost his stats before turning the tide. Today, against 5 wolf riders, just 1 youth, 1 spear, he cut through the horde unscathed. All this progress in a single day. What would he become in 3 days? 5 days? 10 days? How would lords plotting to beg for grain react when they face Li Yi? System notifications. Monster incursion complete. Next wave arrives tomorrow at 1800 hours. Killed goblin. Looted spiked club. Beast hide. Killed wolf rider goblin. Looted cleaver ×3. Wolf pelt. Territory structure unlocked. Auto arrow tower. Huh. Loot's underwhelming this time. Zhang Rui felt a flicker of disappointment. More monsters had spawned, yet the drops were worse than yesterday. Among all the worthless common-tier junk, only the arrow tower counted as a meaningful reward. He walked to the territory gate and placed the tower blueprint. The structure expanded as it materialized, settling firmly on the right side outside the gate. The wooden tower stood roughly 3 meters tall, covering 10 square meters. Territory structure, arrow tower, tier, common. Function, automatically fire arrows at hostiles 1 shot per second. Arrow capacity, 100/100. Attack range, 200 meters. Upgrade requirements, 100 timber plus 2 common arrow towers, or 1 green tier arrow tower core. Description, basic defensive fortification. Arrows draw power from a 30 physique, full draw. Damage scales with arrow quality. Not bad at all. Once the newbie phase ended, and he ventured out to explore, the tower would leave his territory with basic defense. If he lined the entire perimeter with arrow towers, security would skyrocket. 1 tower was fine for now. He had endless grain to trade for more. Grain was the ultimate hard currency, unmatched in purchasing power. Dinner's ready. Help yourselves to as much as you want. Zhang Rui served duo first, then fixed himself a bowl of corn and pumpkin congee alongside a roasted sweet potato and 2 baked potatoes, retreating into the manor to eat. As he dined, he browsed the trade hub, filtering listings for territory structures. Arrow tower, 300 gene grain. Latrine, 100 gene grain. Blue tier, giant beast den, 50,000 gene grain. The listings told a clear story. A massive number of lords were on the brink of starvation. Arrow towers normally sold for around 600 gene, now marked down by half. He'd snap one up immediately. Latrines were a must-buy too. Though the territory only housed men at present, establishing sanitation rules early would prevent plague outbreaks once more residents arrived, new and old alike. A blue-tier giant beast den, someone was selling one already? Zhang Rui stared at the listing for a long while, burning to purchase it, yet the price was exorbitant. Few lords could scrape together 50,000 gene of grain this early in the game. Even with his blessed farm, he could barely afford it. Maybe I can haggle the price down. Zhang Rui sent a private message to the seller. Can you lower the price? 25,000 gene grain. A blunt, 50% counteroffer. Nearly a minute passed. and the message still showed unread. It was to be expected. Anyone owning a giant beast could dominate the early game single-handedly. The smallest giant beasts were elephant-sized, with a minimum base physique stat of 500. Raw stats made them unstoppable powerhouses. Every lord knew this truth. Dozens of players would flood the seller with begging messages and counteroffers. Knowing this, Zhang Rui didn't fixate on waiting for a reply. He kept scrolling through the trade hub to stock up. Another arrow tower, added to cart. Watchtower, 1,000 gene grain. A fantastic purchase. It granted vision through the dark void beyond territory borders, alerting him to threats ahead of time. 1,000 gene was a trivial cost. Storage warehouse, 500 gene grain. Another essential buy. A level 1 lord's inventory only held 30 slots, each stackable infinitely. For ordinary lords, this was more than enough, but Zhang Rui was operating on an entirely different level. In this world, grain equaled wealth, and wealth bought every resource he needed. Casual shopping sprees emptied his inventory slots fast. After browsing, Zhang Rui finalized his purchases: 2 arrow towers, 1 latrine, 1 watchtower, and 1 storage warehouse. He also stocked up on seeds, arrows, raw meat, and seasonings to sustain continuous farming and improve daily meals. Tired of restocking supplies every day, he posted a permanent bulk buy order once his transactions cleared. He listed 10,000 gene of grain to purchase all varieties of seeds, split into 3 price brackets. 50 gene grain equals 10 common seeds. Note attached. Message privately for higher tier seeds. Attach images only. Irrelevant inquiries ignored. Having posted the order, he turned back to his meal. Region 996 had endured 2 monster incursions already, claiming over 1 million lord lives. Countless survivors remained, nearly all crippled by food shortages. Zhang Rui's bulk buy listing vanished the instant it went live. The global chat channel erupted instantly. Wow, that's a lifesaver. Traded 100 blueberry seeds for 500 gene grain. Thank you to whoever posted this. No more backbreaking farming for me. Who clicked faster than me? I finally spotted a grain seller, and it's gone in 1 second flat. Quit rushing for clicks and use your brain. This is all about reaction speed. Wait a second, someone's selling a giant beast in? Blue tier no less. Not surprising. Giant beasts eat mountains of food. Most lords can't afford to feed them. Or the seller's a top-tier player with better units and doesn't need it anymore. 10,000 gene of grain barely rippled the massive player population. Only a small group of buyers commented before their messages were buried under discussions about the giant beast den listing. Only a handful of lords who managed to snap up grain realized this seller held massive stockpiles. He could buy out all those seed vendors and still have surplus to sell. His grain reserves must have exceeded 500 kilograms at the very least. They quickly hit the follow button, ready to strike first the next time Zhang Rui listed goods. Among these lords was the one who'd put the giant beast nest up for sale. Zhang Rui had just handed his bowls over to be washed when a reply popped up. Are you Zhang Rui? Huh. Zhang Rui stared blankly at the message. He was just wondering who this person was when another message rushed in. I'm Xiao Qianqian. If you're Zhang Rui, send a selfie to prove it. Xiao Qianqian. Zhang Rui blinked in shock. Wow, she'd really made it far. She'd even gotten her hands on a blue-quality giant beast nest. Send a photo? No way. The boundless void held endless oddities. Who knew if there were items that could lock onto a target just from a name and a picture? Zhang Rui shot back a long string of text instead. 3rd floor, room 309, Jinsheng No. 1 middle school. 2 McFlurries at McDonald's across from the school gate. Phone number ending in 5159, 4 nines in a row. If this really was Xiao Qianqian, she'd definitely recognize him from their classroom, the meeting spot, and the matching last 4 digits of their phone numbers. Maybe she'd even slash the price by 90% out of old classmate camaraderie, might even give it to him for free. Zhang Rui snickered to himself, thinking he was letting his imagination run wild. Xiao Qianqian has sent a gift, giant beast nest, land reclamation token. Wait, what? She's actually giving these to me. Zhang Rui's mind went buzzing as he read the message. The giant beast nest was a blue-quality barracks. The units it summoned had barely any flaws besides their insatiable appetite for food. As for the land reclamation token, its effects were extraordinary. As the saying goes, a single grain of sand holds a world, a single leaf bears enlightenment. Every lord's territory space in the boundless void could be likened to grains of sand, pressed up against one another. During the novice phase, territory spaces were shielded, unable to touch or border adjacent regions. Once the novice period ended, neighboring spaces would automatically connect to your territory. This formed unexplored zones ripe for reclamation to expand your land. The land reclamation token was a special consumable that forced a space in one direction to border your territory, unlocking it for reclamation at will. For powerful lords, this item was equivalent to an unknown treasure trove. Venturing into uncharted reclamation zones could lead you to outposts, seize one, and you'd guaranteed gain a barracks. You might also encounter bosses or rival lords. Slaying them rewarded a lord core. Bosses formed when monsters devoured lords who possessed a lord status panel. Villages and towns could also be found. Capturing or absorbing them yielded population, grain, and territory facilities. The gift Xiao Qianqian had sent him, a giant beast nest plus a land reclamation token, was worth an astronomical sum. Zhang Rui almost couldn't bring himself to accept it. It was like this. If someone asked a tiny favor and handed you $100, you'd take it without a second thought. But if someone gave you 100 million without asking for anything in return, you'd be filled with unease. Xiao Qianqian, don't feel awkward about it that I didn't have the confidence to survive a farmer-type territory start. I owe you a life debt that I said I'd find a way to repay you. This giant beast nest makes up for your lack of combat units, and the land reclamation token offsets your limited variety of territory facilities. Alright, hit me up anytime you're short on grain. I'll give you a discount. Since she'd put it that way, Zhang Rui didn't beat around the bush and accepted the gifts outright. We're even now. Once Zhang Rui accepted the gifts, Xiao Qianqian closed the chat window immediately. At first, she'd been overjoyed when Zhang Rui traded her for the token. She truly hadn't believed she'd survive a farmer starting territory. But after the trade, her initial excitement faded, leaving a heavy weight in her heart. She feared she'd brought disaster down on Zhang Rui. There was no turning back now that everything was set in stone. She could only resolve to seek out Zhang Rui once they entered the boundless void, find a chance to help him, and settle this debt. She had to admit her luck was extraordinary. Her random starting territory came with an angel rebirth pool, allowing her to recruit angel units. Thanks to this advantage, she'd slain a rock-armored mammoth during the second monster invasion and obtained the giant beast nest. She'd listed it at an exorbitant price and set her trade settings to allow private messages only from farmer-type lords, all in hopes of tracking down Zhang Rui to repay her debt. Besides, she wouldn't be able to feed such gluttonous units for a very long time. This is a terrible bargain, my lord, the angel Avril said softly. My life is worth more than anything. Xiao Qianqian turned to look at her. And besides, I never would have met you if not for him, would I? Avril fell silent for a moment. Then a gentle smile spread across her face. She pressed a hand to her chest and bowed deeply. I shall clear all foes from your path, my lord. Meanwhile, Zhang Rui had finished arranging all his territory facilities. 2 arrow towers stood on the left side of the main gate and the far left corner respectively. The watchtower was built at the territory center. The warehouse sat right next to the lord's manor, and the giant beast nest was erected behind the manor. The latrine was tucked in the farthest corner. He couldn't let its stench drift over the granaries. His territory, once nothing but vast farmland, now looked like a proper lord's domain. Its only downside was the giant beast nest's enormous footprint, which took up far too much space. This cave den for the beast spanned a full 200 square meters, cutting heavily into his farmable land. It wasn't a major issue, though. He didn't have enough laborers to tend all his farmland anyway, so extra fields would just sit idle. Tomorrow, once he used the land reclamation token and successfully reclaimed new land, he could enter construction mode to rearrange all his buildings and free up more prime farmland. Zhang Rui pulled up the stat panels for his 3 new structures, committing their functions and upgrade requirements to memory. The watchtower issued early warnings of enemies within 1,000 meters. The warehouse boasted 100 storage slots with food preservation, each slot holding up to 9,999 units of the same item. The latrine collected manure, which could later be processed into fertilizer once he built a workshop. The final structure was far more impressive. Barracks, giant beast nest quality, blue recruitable unit, rock-armored mammoth ×1 recruitment cost, 10,000 gene of any food maximum beast capacity, 5 upgrade requirements, 20,000 stone, 1,000 iron or plus 5 blue quality barracks cores, or 1 purple quality barracks core. Thank goodness I'm still in the novice phase, Zhang Rui grinned, feeling like he'd scored 10,000 gene of grain for free. The fact that only 1 unit could be recruited meant the giant beast nest started at blue quality right out the gate, and the spawn mammoth would also be blue, born with 2 innate skills. Curious about the new unit's abilities, Zhang Rui recruited it on the spot without hesitation. Orc unit, Rock Armored Mammoth, Dun Dun Quality. Blue Physique, 1000 Spirit. 100 Daily Maximum Digestion. 100 Gene of Food Daily Minimum Food Requirement. 500 Gene of Food Skills. Rock Armor, Seismic Smash. Rock Armor, a shroud of earth element wraps its body, drastically reducing incoming physical damage. Its rocky plating partially melts when struck by fire attacks. Any enemy that lands a melee blow will suffer recoil damage. Seismic Smash slams the ground with its trunk or front legs, dealing area of effect damage and knocking targets to the ground. Talent, Trample when attacking. There is a 20 chance to trigger Trample, damaging all enemies within range. Damage intensifies the closer foes stand. Description, if deprived of sufficient food, it will fly into a berserk frenzy and attack everything within the territory except its lord. No words needed, this thing was absolutely monstrous. Just look at its size. Standing over 5 meters tall, it must weigh 20 to 30 tons at minimum. Its mere presence alone would crush the morale of small and medium-sized foes by 30%. Of course, such a colossal body came with an insatiable appetite. It needed a minimum of 500 gene of food daily, yet could only digest 100 gene. For 100 gene went to waste each day. Ordinary lords could never afford to feed such a grain guzzler. To Zhang Rui, however, this was no trouble at all. He could easily grow 5,000 gene of grain a day, let alone 500. Moreover, those 400 gene of seemingly wasted food weren't truly lost. They rapidly converted into manure brimming with void energy, a natural fertilizer that boosted crop yields on regular farmland. He could use it himself on newly reclaimed fields later, or even sell it as a commodity for extra profit. Dun Dun's talent and dual skills cemented its role as a mobile fortress, a heavy assault tank through and through. There was just one regret. Zhang Rui's workforce was still far too small. He only had 10 laborers tending the fields, so yields of premium crops stayed low. He couldn't keep feeding Dun Dun top-tier produce nonstop. This meant Dun Dun would grow slower than Li Yi. That didn't change one undeniable truth, though. Xiao Qianqian is truly a kind soul, Zhang Rui sighed sincerely. Handing over a barracks capable of summoning such a powerful unit out of the blue, she was nothing short of a living bodhisattva. As he marveled, a thought crossed his mind. If Xiao Qianqian possessed this item, she must have the strength to defeat the corresponding monsters or seize the relevant outposts. Heroes were as numerous as fish crossing a river across the void. Among 20 million novice lords, Xiao Qianqian could not be the only one with such power. Countless powerful lords would covet his prime farmland. If he wanted to protect his territory, he had to keep pushing forward. I hope I stumble across a village during tomorrow's reclamation, he muttered. Then I'll have plenty more hands to work the fields. The next dawn, moo boom. Zhang Rui jolted awake from thunderous crashes outside. He rushed to the window and peered out. What the hell? The sight before him left him stunned. The 5-meter-tall Dun Dun had just hauled itself off the ground. Like a playful baby elephant in videos, it whipped its trunk back and forth before tripping over its own limb. It crashed heavily into the dirt, triggering a minor localized earthquake. A baby elephant standing 5 meters tall, Zhang Rui wore a peculiar expression. Last night had been dark, and Dun Dun had curled up inside its nest right after spawning, so he hadn't gotten a good look. In the morning light, it was clear. Dun Dun was nothing but a juvenile elephant, its tusks not even visible yet. How massive would it grow once fully mature? 15, 16 meters tall, no doubt. Zhang Rui stepped out of the Lord's manor to find several farmers clutching makeshift weapons, huddled together to guard the entrance. My lord, there's a monster outside. One laborer twisted toward him, voice trembling with unmasked panic. Stay calm. It's our ally. Zhang Rui patted the man's shoulder and smiled. The farmers froze for several seconds before slowly lowering their hose. They exchanged glances, faint sparks of excitement lighting up their eyes. Their lord had actually tamed such a ferocious beast. He was extraordinary beyond measure. Li Yi and Duo, his other 2 units, had long since Dun Dun was no enemy. Li Yi tightened and loosened his grip on his spear repeatedly, silently vowing to grow stronger faster. Duo turned its head, radiating an almost human sense of admiration. All right, back to your tasks. Zhang Rui waved them off, sending farmers back to the fields and others to prepare breakfast. He walked straight to the warehouse and hauled out mountains of fruits and vegetables. From what he knew, an excessively high physique stat paired with a low spirit stat made it hard to control one's own body. Mild cases, like Li Yi, struggled to regulate their strength. Severe cases, such as Dun Dun, couldn't even master their own trunks. The solution was simple: eat plenty of fruits and vegetables to raise spirit. Sure enough, After Dun Dun polished off nearly 100 gene of produce in one go, a dramatic shift came over the mammoth. Like a child with a brand new toy, it maneuvered its trunk through all sorts of tricks. It curled up stones Lee used for target practice and hurled them across the ground, then mimicked the farmers by jabbing its trunk into the dirt. Boom! A basin-sized crater was gouged out of the earth. The farmers stared on, utterly dumbfounded. Dun Dun wasn't done yet. It scooped up more stones with its trunk, dropped them into the hole, and covered them with soil. It turned to Zhang Rui, a human-like grin spreading across its face. A life with cheats really is just plain ordinary. Zhang Rui smiled and gave Dun Dun a thumbs up. For any other lord, turning a unit this powerful into a functional fighter would take 3 to 5 days, even a full week at this stage. He'd only needed a single meal. He pulled up Dun Dun's stat panel again and saw its daily food digestion cap had dropped to 0. It was as if its body craved a specific nutrient, boosting absorption efficiency for that resource. Dun Dun's spirit stat had skyrocketed after absorbing all the fruits and vegetables it had eaten. Zhang Rui decided to ration his grain for the day and hold off on feeding Dun Dun premium crops. After all, you couldn't squander your wealth or grain recklessly. Breakfast ended, and everyone was full. The 10 farmers returned to their usual planting duties, while Zhang Rui headed to the trade center to purchase a beast saddle. Upon use, a woven chair of vines and timber fitted itself to Dun Dun's back, complete with a ladder for mounting. The seat was sized for a single person, with 2 grooves carved into the armrests, one for a bow, one for arrows. Then, activate land reclamation token. Instantly, the darkness to the left of his territory faded into a thick mist. Zhang Rui climbed the ladder onto Dun Dun's back and settled into the vine chair. It felt sturdy and secure. Dun Dun, Li Duo, let's go reclaim new land. Duoduo's sharp nose and superior speed put it at the front of their party. As it advanced, mist within a 10-meter radius around it split apart, revealing the land beneath. A vast grassland stretched out before them, carpeted in green dotted with scattered wildflowers. A gentle breeze brushed Zhang Rui's cheeks like a soft massage. Leaning forward on Dun Dun's back, he held out a hand to feel the wind and commented, "Wind quality A, flat as an airfield." Dun Dun stepped past the territory's boundary. Zhang Rui glanced down. Inside the wooden fence lay fertile black farmland. Outside stretched smooth green grass. The tawny shared border zone that had once surrounded his territory was gone, extending all the way to the edge of the misty reclamation zone. The moment Zhang Rui's entire body crossed out of his territory bounds, a system alert chimed. Entering reclamation state. Food digestion efficiency increased. Trade center access disabled. Dispel all mist within this zone to permanently integrate it into your territory bounds. For lords, reclamation was akin to waging war. As the old saying went, provisions must march before troops. During reclamation and warfare in the boundless void, all units' food consumption spiked. But ample grain was also the fastest way to level up your army. Zhang Rui had come fully prepared. He'd emptied most of his backpack, filling 10 slots with all manner of food. The remaining 20 slots were reserved for treasures they might uncover along the way. This zone was far larger than he'd anticipated. Normally, even at Dun Dun's pace, crossing his original territory from one end to the other took less than 3 minutes. Yet they'd trekked through the mist for nearly 10 minutes without spotting the tawny shared border, meaning this new land was at least 3 times the size of his starting territory. Zhang Rui's excitement flared. The bigger the zone, the higher the chance of rare finds. Every stretch they'd crossed so far was flat grassland. This was almost certainly a sprawling steppe. What resources did grasslands hold? Medicinal herbs, wild horses, cattle and sheep, nomadic villagers, natural salt flats, and small open coal mines. My lord, there might be horses here. Li called out excitedly. Zhang Rui followed his gaze and saw Li kneeling, prodding a clump of tawny matter hidden in the grass with a cornstalk. He picked it up, crushed it gently, and sniffed it. A fist-sized dung ball, reeks of grass, almost certainly horse manure. It's fresh, no older than an hour. Duo, memorize this scent and track them down. Zhang Rui ordered without hesitation. Wild horses on the steppe traveled in herds, belonged to nomadic tribes, or followed merchant caravans. Horse herds meant outposts, nomads meant laborers, caravans meant resources and manpower. Any of the three would be a massive windfall. Woof. Duo locked onto the horse scent lingering in the manure and sprinted across the grass, following faint tracks on the ground. Dun, Li follow close behind. They'd only run several dozen meters when a pile of cold ash came into view, half-burnt firewood still scattered within it. Zhang Rui could draw only one conclusion. This was a merchant caravan. Wild horses didn't build fires, and nomads usually traveled with permanent camp supplies. Only passing caravans would stop randomly to light a fire and cook. What a fine caravan. Recruit them. Then we'll have supplies and manpower alike. Zhang Rui's excitement rubbed off on the two animal troops, one large and one small. They sprinted wildly across the grassland, frolicking with abandon. Dun Dun, in particular, curled Li up with his trunk and galloped off carrying the boy. They ran for roughly another 10 minutes. Duo, who led the pack, suddenly skidded to a halt. Its forelegs stiffened straight. It twitched its nose a few times and twisted its head to glance back at Zhang Rui. It could not speak, nor did it make a sound. Yet its expression told everything clearly. There were people ahead. Zhang Rui caught the message instantly. He waved for Duo to creep forward cautiously and dispel the mist. Dun Dun's weight was staggering. Every step sent tremors rippling through the ground. Fortunately, sound did not carry through the fog, so they would not scare the strangers away. Layers of mist peeled apart as Duo advanced. Soon, the rear of a wooden wagon emerged from the haze, its cargo hold draped with gray canvas. Small caravan. Personnel, 10 humans, 3 horses. Cargo transported, medicinal herbs, beef, mutton, fried millet, trauma ointment. Description, an ordinary small caravan, maybe recruited or raided. 10 people, medicinal herbs, beef and mutton. Zhang Rui's eyes lit up at once. These were all invaluable resources. He was desperately short of labor right now. Even white-grade medicinal herbs possessed extraordinary rapid healing properties. Eating beef and mutton boosted physical constitution, amplifying the muscular explosive power of his troops. His spirits soared. He signaled Duo to press onward and expand their line of sight further. Moments later, the back of the first human figure came into view. A shrill, pained horse whinny suddenly rang out ahead. The mist scattered violently in all directions. The instant living creatures were detected, revealing a scene of chaos. Over 30 steppe wolves had surrounded the small caravan in a semicircle. 2 men lay motionless in pools of blood. One horse had been tackled to the ground, its neck soaked red with blood, lifeless. The remaining 8 huddled back to back, weapons clutched tight in trembling hands, their faces ashen with terror. They slashed repeatedly at the lunging steppe wolves. Then Dun, standing 5 meters tall, stepped into sight. The thunderous crash of its footsteps silenced the entire battlefield. Every pair of eyes, human and wolf alike, locked onto the giant elephant simultaneously. The caravan members gaped, their Adam's apples bobbing nervously, unsure whether this colossal beast was friend or foe. The wolves flattened their ears in unison, baring their fangs less aggressively. Several scraped their front paws restlessly against the earth and shrank back half a step. Damn it, we're too late. Zhang Rui glanced at the dead horse and the 2 fallen men, cursing aloud in frustration. He had already claimed the entire caravan as his own property. 1 horse and 2 men lost meant 3 fewer laborers. He pulled up the steppe wolf stat panel. Steppe wolf. Grade, white. Constitution, 30. Buff constitution, 39. Spirit, 5. Talent, wolf pack synergy. Wolf pack synergy racial bond talent. When more than 10 steppe wolves are present, constitution rises by 10. When more than 20 are present, constitution rises by 20. When more than 30 are present, constitution rises by 30 currently active. Maximum stat cap, 100. 30 odd wolves, each with 39 constitution. This would have posed a genuine threat on day 1. Now, they were nothing. Zhang Rui glanced at Dun, then pulled up Li Yi's current stat sheet. After feasting the previous night and again that morning, Li Yi's constitution stat had surpassed 200. Li Yi, slay every last one of these wolves. Zhang Rui tapped Dun's flank with his foot, signaling the elephant to set Li Yi down. As you command. The youth charged forward at his shout, twirling his spear and diving straight into the wolf pack. A whoop, a deafening howl erupted from the pack. The wolves, momentarily cowed by Dun, instantly flew into battle frenzy. They lowered their forelimbs, arched their spines, and let loose a chorus of low snarls. Their numerical advantage filled them with bold confidence. Li gave them no time to react. He closed the distance in 3 long strides and cut into their ranks. 3 steppe wolves leaped at him all at once, jaws gaping wide to sink teeth into his throat, arms and thighs. Li never slowed his pace. He thrust his spear upward sharply from below. The spearhead sliced clean through the first wolf's lower jaw. He twisted his wrist, swinging the spear shaft sideways to slam into the second wolf's midsection. The third wolf was nearly upon his shoulder, yet Li Yi did not dodge. He jabbed the spears but beneath his armpit, driving it straight down the wolf's throat. 3 exchanges, 3 dead wolves crumpled to the ground. The caravan men stared, eyes bulging out of their heads. They had fought these wolves for ages, barely clinging to their own lives, fully aware how vicious the beasts were. Fast, ferocious biters with coordinated, tactical hunting patterns. One wolf would lunge to pin a target while others circled around to hamstring their prey from the sides. Yet this youth, who looked no older than 17 or 18, had felled 3 wolves with 3 precise spear strikes. His movements were ruthlessly efficient, every thrust fatal, not even a single heavy gasp between blows. Where did he come from? One caravan member whispered. A man beside him tugged his arm before he could finish speaking. They exchanged glances, their taut shoulders easing slightly. Whoever he was, his target was clearly the wolves, not them. The battle raged on. Li Yi did not slow for a single moment after breaking into the pack. Every spear strike claimed at least one wolf. He had torn a gap straight through their formation, blood splattered to stain the grass crimson. But wolf pack tactics never fixate on a single foe. Several wolves quickly circled around Li Yi and lunged toward the caravan from both flanks. The huddled merchants made far easier prey than the spear-wielding youth. Zhang Rui rode atop Dun Dun, watching the scene unfold from his high vantage point. Dun Dun, left side, Duo, right side. The words barely left his mouth before Dun Dun's long trunk coiled outward, snatching a wolf mid-leap on the left. It smashed the beast violently against the ground. A thunderous crash sent the flying wolf careening into 2 others, spraying blood everywhere. Meanwhile, several wolves had nearly reached the caravan's perimeter on the right. A herder instinctively raised his scimitar, but before he could strike, Duo pounced. Thanks to copious premium crops, Duo's constitution neared 100. Against steppe wolves with a mere 40 constitution, the fight resembled an adult fighting small children. One flying tackle sent a wolf flying backward, howling in agony, unable to stand for minutes. A single bite took down another wolf that never saw the attack coming. Blood gushed from its throat as it collapsed limply to the dirt. The wolf pack's numbers dwindled visibly by the second. Each swing of Li Yi's spear sent another wolf to its grave. Duo's fangs never rested. Any wolf caught in its jaws died instantly. Dun Dun was even more devastating. Sometimes, it did not even need to draw near. The crushing shockwave from its footfalls alone flattened wolves outright. The battle's outcome had never been in doubt. 30-odd wolves could not mount a coherent counterattack against overwhelming strength. In less than 2 minutes, the last wolf attempting to flee with its tail tucked was impaled by Li Yi's thrown spear and collapsed motionless on the grass. A heavy silence fell over the steppe, broken only by wind and the thick stench of blood. A system notification chimed at that moment. You have successfully wiped out a steppe wolf pack. Battle victory achieved. Loot acquired. Wolf pelts, wolf fangs. New territory structure unlocked. Dungeon. Zhang Rui scanned the loot, his face lighting up with delight. A dungeon? This was a phenomenal asset. Normally, hostile troops or monsters could only be slain for rewards. A dungeon changed everything. He could capture foes alive, lock them away, and slowly tame or subvert them to turn enemies into loyal subjects. All lingering frustration over the dead horse, and 2 men vanished in an instant. Zhang Rui patted Dun Dun's back with his foot and rode toward the caravan. The 8 merchants stood rigid, their nerves frayed. When Dun Dun's massive shadow loomed overhead, several held their breath entirely. Do not be alarmed. I am the farm lord of a nearby farm, a newly ascended territory ruler. If you wish, you may seek shelter at my lands to rest. Zhang Rui loomed over the shaken merchants as he spoke, pulling up the caravan stat panel and selecting the recruit option. The men exchanged silent glances. No one spoke. The air grew thick with tension. At that moment, a middle-aged man stepped forward from the group. He was clearly their leader, a polished scimitar hanging at his waist. The man tilted his head back to look up at Zhang Rui atop Dun Dun and bowed deeply. We thank your lordship for saving our lives. We swear loyal service to you. The man spoke a regional dialect, yet the words translated seamlessly into speech Zhang Rui could understand. He did not find their immediate offer of allegiance strange. His textbooks covered such lore. Caravans in the boundless void fell into 3 categories: those backed by lords or native factions, those under merchant guild patronage, and wandering freelance traders such as these. Rootless and unprotected, they faced total annihilation by monsters on every trade route. To gain permanent residency within a territory was akin to a jobless drifter landing a high-paying, low-stress position close to home. The other merchants glanced at each other after their leader spoke, undisguised joy shining in their eyes. The leader dropped to one knee first, followed by the other 7 men kneeling in a scattered chorus. "We bow before your lordship. I am your subject, Shurjin. We bow before your lordship. I am your subject, Shurdang." Zhang Rui was about to reply when the system notification sounded first. Recruitment of the small caravan complete. Caravan supplies gained. White-grade medicinal herbs times 100, green-grade medicinal herb. Steppe ginseng times 10, dried beef times 300, dried mutton times 300, 1,000 gene fried millet, trauma ointment times 10. During wars or territory expansion, the caravan may be dispatched to trade and replenish territory resources. Immediately afterward, stat panels for all 8 men lit up one after another. Zhang Rui skimmed through them quickly. Shurjin, their leader, boasted the highest constitution at a modest 25 points. The rest scored merely 10 or so points each. One panel, however, caught his eye. Shirley, a youth of 17 or 18, possessed a unique talent, tempering mastery. Tempering mastery. When hammering mineral ores repeatedly, there is a 10 chance to raise the ore's quality grade. Current blacksmith proficiency level low, maximum refinable or grade, blue. Zhang Rui blinked in surprise. This boy was a natural blacksmith. Blue grade ores fetched a staggering amount of grain on the market. As his blacksmith skill level rose, he would refine even higher quality minerals. He skimmed brief descriptions for the remaining men: tending fires, cooking, horse care, tent assembly, construction repair. All possessed basic survival skills, yet none held formal combat or production talents. No need for such formal deference. A simple bow will suffice from now on. He bade them rise. He instructed the merchants to follow him back to the territory first. 8 new laborers were a valuable gain. Rather than venturing deeper into uncharted territory, bringing them back to work the fields would accelerate technology point acquisition and speed up the upgrade of premium yields. As traveling merchants, they must have crossed vast stretches of land on their journey. He could ask them to sketch rough maps of all regions they had passed through to aid future exploration. Gulp. When the party, 10 humans, 1 giant elephant, 2 horses and 1 hound, returned to the territory, the first sight to greet them was recently harvested wheat, piled into a golden mound easily weighing nearly 10,000 gene. Farmers divided labor efficiently. Some filled sacks, others hauled grain to the warehouse, unbridled smiles on every face. A smaller pile of premium wheat sat before the Lord's manor, releasing a rich, sweet malt aroma. Shurjin and his men froze completely at the view. One swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. Another stood agape, mouth hanging open. This is where we will live from now on. Does your lordship truly intend to take us in? Shurjin shot the speaker a glance, but said nothing, his grip on the horse reins tightening and loosening repeatedly. He understood perfectly well what he saw. This rich black soil yielded 10,000 gene of grain per harvest with only a handful of farmers tending it, proof the territory would never suffer food shortages. Coupled with the 5-meter colossal elephant standing guard, they possessed ample military strength to protect their stores. A territory with endless grain and formidable fighting power held boundless development potential. "We thank your lordship for sheltering us." Shurjin dismounted and bowed low to Zhang Rui, barely containing his fervent excitement. The other merchants bowed alongside him, echoing their gratitude. The older men's voices trembled uncontrollably. "Enough of that. Start pitching tents first." Zhang Rui clapped his hands to regain their attention. "The barracks lack space for all of you. Tents will suffice for the next 2 days. We will build permanent housing once more residents arrive." The men exchanged glances, not a single word of complaint spoken. With mountains of grain laid out before them, they would never go hungry again. Sleeping in tents was trivial. They would gladly sleep on bare dirt if needed. The group set to work at once. Some erected tents, while those unfamiliar with the task helped tend fields and transport supplies, moving with urgent, vigorous energy. Zhang Rui pulled Shurjin aside to question him about resource nodes they had spotted along their route and their locations. "Your lordship, we discovered 5 resource nodes nearby: 1 lake, 1 berry grove, a horse pasture for horned steeds, a nomadic tribe, and what appeared to be an open air or vein." Shurjin hesitated, uncertainty coloring his tone. "One of our men claimed to spot merfolk as we passed, so we dared not draw near. We cannot confirm what we saw." 5 resource nodes. What incredible luck. Zhang Rui's heart skipped a beat, though he kept his excitement in check. Native wanderers differed from Lord's troops. They faced no movement restrictions within the boundless void, and could travel freely across territories so long as the local lord permitted passage. Not all 5 nodes necessarily lay within the cleared steppelands. Merfolk, in particular, could not appear randomly on grassland terrain. Either they had swum upstream from the ocean, or another nearby lord counted merfolk among their troops. Still, this was not an urgent concern. He would secure this steppe territory first. Once the new lord tutorial period concluded and adjacent territories bordered his own, all unknowns would resolve themselves. Does anyone among you know how to draw maps? Zhang Rui asked. Shurjin nodded and called over a middle-aged man. The man quickly sketched rough land contours on a hide parchment. Zhang Rui glanced over it. The drawing was crude, yet all key landmarks were clearly marked. Rough hand-drawn map obtained. Map system unlocked. All geographic data synced to system map. He pulled up the map interface. Aside from his territory and already illuminated zones, most land remained shrouded in dark mist. The steppe they had just crossed sat west of the territory. The horned steed pasture lay northwest, the nomadic tribe due north, and the open or vein southwest, all hidden under unnavigable darkness. The lake and berry grove rested within mist-covered land, resource nodes he could explore immediately. Well done. Each of you shall receive a premium apple as reward. Zhang Rui pulled 2 premium apples from his backpack and tossed them over. Thank you, your lordship. ×2, you may go. Shurjin, stay a moment. Premium crop reserves had grown tight since Dun Dun joined the territory. Zhang Rui kept careful track of supplies. For older residents like Shurjin's group, he would not feed them premium grain at every meal from now on, at most a 50-50 mix of standard and premium rations. Their growth potential paled in comparison to Shirley, Li Yi, and the 10 young farmers. Feeding precious premium crops to them yielded minimal returns. He planned to institute a formal rule. Every resident would earn premium crop rewards by contributing labor to the territory. New arrivals received 3 days of free premium meals as welcome benefits to build loyalty. Countless details needed consideration for this system to function smoothly. Zhang Rui laid out every provision to Shurjin and instructed him to draft formal written regulations. Shurjin's stat sheet held a telling line. Caravan captain with basic leadership proficiency. Though no match for legendary strategists like Zhuge Liang or Zhang Liang, he was more than capable of managing the territory's current population of 12 people. Zhang Rui also briefed him on how to orient future new recruits upon their arrival. As territory lord, he was the settlement's overseer. He could not double as HR and receptionist for every new resident. After finishing his instructions, his tone turned solemn. Shurjin, by my authority as farm lord and territory ruler, I appoint you as the first steward of internal affairs. You will record and manage all residents' skills and contributions to the territory. You shall also oversee housing and integration for all new arrivals. Shurjin froze, head snapping upward, disbelief flooding his gaze. He had only just joined, and now he was granted an official administrative position. His lips trembled, his shoulders shook as he bowed deeply. Your lordship, I am honored by your trust. Shurjin swears unwavering loyalty to you with my life. You may resume your duties. We lack sufficient manpower for now. Finish compiling the records, then assist with field labor. Understood. Shurjin bowed and hurried off to carry out his orders. Zhang Rui stood still, gazing at his bustling territory before him. Farmers tilled the soil, newcomers pitched tents, Dun Dun wallowed and frolicked on the ground, while Duo chased 2 horses round and round before trotting back. Once, this place had been nothing but a stretch of black fertile earth with only 2 people. Now, there were over a dozen residents, a colossal elephant, a hound, and 2 horses. How quickly things have changed, he thought to himself. Right after that, Zhang Rui turned around and pulled out a dungeon model. He tossed it down at a spot close to the lair of giant beasts. The model expanded the moment it hit the ground. A fissure split open the earth, revealing an entrance resembling a cellar. Terrain facility, basic dungeon quality, white tier max prisoner capacity, 0 tints minimum brainwashing duration, 6 hours. Consume 100 gene of grain to cut the brainwashing time by 6 hours. Upgrade requirements, 1000 timber plus 2 white tier dungeon cores, or 1 green tier dungeon core description. With this structure, you may accept enemy surrenders and brainwash elite hostile units to join your side. My territory grows more complete by the day. If the monsters that attack tonight are still goblin wolf riders, I'll capture every last one and lock them up in the dungeon. I've got more than enough grain to burn through to slash their brainwashing time. That'll net me a squad of goblin wolf rider troops under my command. Feed them premium crops once at dusk, again at dawn, and a third time at midday. 3 servings of high-quality crops will boost their stats, turning their stat sheets into absolute powerhouses. With this plan in place, once the novice phase ends, even if enemies assail my territory from all 4 directions, I'll have the strength to hold my ground. Even tomorrow is part of the distant future. The future is far too vague. Zhang Rui seized the day instead. He wasted no time tallying his supplies, then set off to explore new lands once more, accompanied by Li Yi, Dun Dun, Duo Duo, and a newly tamed horse. Li Yi mounted the steed, his spear laid horizontally across the saddle, cutting quite the figure of a roaming cavalier. Unfortunately, Dun Dun's lumbering pace dragged the whole party down, so their overall speed barely improved. Still, Zhang Rui never considered leaving the elephant behind. Heading out without a powerhouse to back him up would spell disaster. If they stumbled upon foes Li Yi couldn't handle, he'd be left helpless. Slow was fine, safety came first. Zhang Rui glanced at his map and resolved to head north along the edge of the mist. After traveling roughly 25 minutes, the mist parted. Gone was the lush green grassland. In its place lay an expanse of tawny barren soil. They had reached the boundary of this explorable zone. 25 minutes travel, around 2,500 meters. This plot is far larger than I expected. Seated atop Dun Dun's back, Zhang Rui roughly calculated the distance. If the stretch spanned equally far lengthwise and widthwise, the total area equaled 14 Tiananmen squares, truly vast. His only trouble was a crippling shortage of manpower. If he commanded thousands upon thousands right now, he could convert this entire grassland into farmland and ramp up agricultural production. The grain and tech points harvested each day would be enough to make him grin in his sleep. First seize the lake. It'll make irrigation effortless later. Zhang Rui tapped the marker for the freshwater lake on his map, setting a small goal for himself. They'd hit the northern limit of their path. Next stop, due west. Whoosh! A sudden gust of wind swept across the plains, sending waves of grass rippling forward. Zhang Rui stretched out an arm to test the wind direction, commenting, "This wind's a solid B-tier gust." Li Yi, mounted on his horse, looked up at him in total confusion, unable to fathom what his lord meant by a B. He'd rambled on about an A rank earlier too, and it all sounded utterly mysterious. With the wind at their backs, the group traveled much faster. Before long, Dun Dun suddenly swung its long trunk toward Zhang Rui, rubbing the tip gently against his palm. Zhang Rui instantly caught on. The elephant was hungry. He pulled pumpkins, corn cobs, and sweet potatoes from his backpack and held them to Dun Dun's trunk tip. The dexterous trunk curled around the produce and pulled it straight into the beast's mouth. They walked on while feeding the elephant, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Some 20 minutes later, a berry grove came into view. Layered thickets stretched far and wide, heavy with clusters of deep purple small berries. Overripe fruit bowed the branches down low. Many had fallen to carpet the earth beneath the bushes. Berry grove rank, small-scale resource node reserves, 20,000 gene white tier berries, 100 gene green tier berries. Description, a standard resource node. Once occupied, it may serve as a hunting ground or host a winery. Zhang Rui's eyes lit up with excitement. Wine was hard currency in the boundless void. It could be traded with native factions for rare resources, boost troop morale before battle, and soothe frayed tempers after skirmishes. It saw use in fending off bitter cold, holiday rituals, drawing wandering refugees, recruiting heroes. The list went on endlessly. Best of all, wine was condensed grain. A single gene of grain filled your stomach quickly, yet wine brewed from the same gene offered nearly identical nourishment without the bloating sensation. Pick up the pace. The small party quickened their march, and soon the full expanse of the berry grove unfolded before them. It covered a substantial stretch of land, though no sheep or cattle lingered nearby, drawn by the fruit. Not that it mattered much. Occupy resource node, small berry grove. Zhang Rui ordered Duo Duo and Li Yi to stand guard, then confirmed the prompt. Resource node occupation in progress. Monsters will converge on this node within 10 minutes. Duo Duo, Li Yi, defend this berry grove at all costs. Mist rolled back in phases all around them. Zhang Rui slung his bow off his back, knocking an arrow to the string, ready to strike at any moment. Such were the occupation rules of the boundless void. To integrate land into one's territory, all mist covering the zone had to be dispelled. Claiming a resource node likewise required a waiting period, during which monsters would inevitably attack. Hold out, and the land would be fully digitized. The berry grove would generate fruit infinitely by siphoning void energy, or rather, berries would respawn on a fixed cycle every 3 to 7 days. Fail to defend it, and everything would vanish without a trace. If he skipped claiming the node entirely, once all berries were harvested, the grove would disappear permanently, non-renewable. 10 minutes stood between them and full ownership of the grove, neither a short nor trivial wait. If only goblins or steppe wolves showed up, Li could handle them single-handedly. But if tough foes arrived, Dun Dun would need to take point. Approximately 2 minutes passed, and several shadowy figures emerged in the distance. With the mist temporarily lifted, Zhang Rui narrowed his eyes and raised an eyebrow at the sight. Humanoid monsters nearly 2 meters tall stood before them. Human torsos paired with wolf heads, claws roughly 50 centimeters long glinting cold at the ends of their forelimbs. Thick gray-black fur covered their entire bodies, and their arms stretched absurdly long. Their claws scraped the ground as they ran, carving deep gouges across the grass. Werewolf quality, green tier physique, 80 spirit, 25 skill, regeneration, powerful self-healing ability that rapidly seals wounds. Talent, shapeshift, freely switch between wolf form and werewolf form. Description, their claws can rend steel as if it were paper. Werewolf form grants flexible, versatile combat tactics. Wolf form boosts physique by 30, an additional 100 buff active on full moon nights. 5 in total, all locked in their hybrid werewolf forms. Without hesitation, they charged straight for the berry grove. They ran with ferocious momentum, slashing their claws through the air to create sharp, whistling sounds, radiating unbridled menace. Instead of fear, a surge of excitement bubbled up inside Zhang Rui. He jumped cleanly off Dun Dun's back and held out an arm to stop Li and Duo from rushing forward. Fall back, both of you. Dun Dun would be the main combatant this round. He dismounted purely out of caution. If the werewolves pounced and swiped, they could easily kill him. Dun Dun, go easy on them. Hold back your strength a little. Zhang Rui stared at the werewolves, eyes shining with greed. Werewolves counted as lupin creatures with periodic dormancy cycles, 5 to 10 minutes of rest at a time, only 3 to 4 hours total sleep each day. If he could train them to farm, they'd be perfect laborers able to toil nonstop 24 hours a day, ideal workhorses for any lord. He'd had no way to subdue them without a dungeon, but now that he owned one, capturing a few alive was a must. Moo. Dun Dun stepped forward, its massive trunk sweeping wide like a giant python and slamming square into the chest of the first werewolf. The creature flew backward over a dozen meters, crashing to the ground, kicking its limbs twice before falling still forever. Zhang Rui pressed a palm to his forehead. Whoa, tone it down more. A second werewolf charged in. This time Dun Dun only exerted roughly 30% of its full strength. Yet when its trunk struck the beast's midriff, the werewolf stiffened instantly and collapsed lifeless on the grass. There was no fighting the raw numbers gap. 1,000 physique stat meant overwhelming, unreasonable dominance. Even lighter, just a tap a little harder than a gentle pat. The third werewolf grew cunning, avoiding a frontal assault to circle around and ambush Dun Dun's flank. The elephant did not even turn its head, shifting its shoulder sideways in a swift, evasive maneuver. That single slight shift sent the werewolf flying as if hit by a truck, leaving it twitching on the ground, barely clinging to life. Fortunately, it still drew breath. Seeing 2 of their pack felled instantly, the remaining 2 werewolves abandoned attacking Dun Dun without a second thought. Using their superior speed, they darted around the elephant from left and right, lunging straight for Zhang Rui. Their claws splayed wide, screaming through the air. Beasts, hold your rampage. Li was unskilled at mounted combat. He vaulted off his horse and thrust his spear, aiming for the left werewolf's thigh. His physique far outmatched the monster's, and his strike was lightning fast and precise. The spear tip pierced cleanly through the werewolf's thigh muscle. The beast merely glanced down at the wound without so much as a whimper, swiping its claw downward in a brutal slash. The ordinary spear Li had carried through countless battles split into splinters beneath the blow. Half the spearhead still embedded in its leg, the werewolf advanced on Li as if unfazed by the injury. Li released the broken shaft and advanced rather than retreating. He clamped both hands tight around the monster's outer wrists. A test of brute strength? His physique towered multiple tiers above the werewolf's. He twisted and forced its arms to cross over its chest, driving his left fist into its right shoulder and his right fist into its left ribcage. The werewolf's eyes bulged as it thrashed wildly, only to find every struggle amplified its agony. Duo handled its target far more brutally. Unlike Li, who grasped Zhang Rui's order to take prisoners alive, the hound had only registered being held back earlier to guard its lord. Now that enemies threatened them, it struck to kill. It sank its jaws directly into the creature's throat, jerking its head hard to tear open the windpipe and snuff out its life in an instant. Werewolf slain. Loot acquired. 30 sharp wolf claws, 3 wolf pelts, 15 beast tendons. Sharp wolf claw green tier. Grants sharpness passive. Effortlessly cleaves all gear below green tier quality. 3 werewolves dead, and the haul was solid. Wolf claws could be forged into weapons, pelts crafted into coats and leather armor, beast tendons for bindings and cords. Zhang Rui turned to glance at the 2 barely breathing captives, a grin spreading across his face. Li Yi, tie them up. Following his instructions, the 2 used beast tendons of varying lengths to bind the werewolves' muzzles, wrists, and ankles tight. The 2 longest spinal tendons served as connecting ropes, one end secured to each of Dun Dun's front legs, the other tied fast to the werewolf's ankles. This way, the elephant could drag them along effortlessly, no extra labor required. Of the 5 werewolves, 3 lay dead and 2 remained incapacitated captives. Not even half the 10-minute occupation timer had elapsed. Li Yi's spear had been split to pieces by the werewolf's claw earlier, leaving him empty-handed. How could he fight unarmed? Zhang Rui's mouth twitched as he watched the man grab the ankle of the werewolf Dun Dun had paralyzed earlier. Li Yi swung the unconscious beast as a makeshift weapon, whirling it through a fresh wave of attacking goblins with terrifying efficiency. The razor-sharp wolf claws sliced clean through skulls with every light swipe. Green monster blood mixed with white brain matter splattered across the grass, and each struck goblin perished instantly, without a single scream. Truly, unnecessarily brutal. Zhang Rui looked away, a flicker of nausea rising in his throat. When monsters died, their physical forms dissolved into void energy absorbed by whoever landed the killing blow, with valuable materials left behind as loot. Yet the process took several seconds, and spilled blood and bodily fluids lingered instead of vanishing at once, leaving a gruesome battlefield in their wake. Thankfully, the fight ended swiftly, and Zhang Rui had not ordered Li Yi to spare any goblins. Goblins had negligible cultivation value. They were insatiable, troublesome creatures akin to hyperactive terriers. He turned his gaze westward. The freshwater lake sat beyond the berry grove, the 2 resource nodes positioned close to one another. Occupying a node drew all nearby monsters to the site, so hordes should have been converging from the lake's direction by now, even at their slow pace. Sure enough, Li Yi had barely finished a sip of water and moved to the western defensive line on Zhang Rui's command when sharp whistling sounds cut through the air. Zip zip. 24 water arrows streaked low over the grass, fast and relentless. Li Yi reacted instantly, shoving the barely living werewolf captive in front of himself as a living shield. Clang, 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 clang. Every water arrow slammed into the werewolf's body, failing to inflict critical harm. Damn, magic-wielding monsters. Zhang Rui stepped backward half a pace, positioning Dun Dun in front of him as a living shield. 3 to 5 seconds later, a troop of dripping wet humanoid figures emerged from the west. Their skin was pale and wrinkled from prolonged submersion, water weeds tangled between their fingers, and wet puddles spread beneath every step they took. Soaking hair covered their heads completely, hiding their facial features. Drowned wraith quality, green tier physique, 50 spirit, 50 skill, water arrow talent. Semi-ethereal form, body exists halfway between spirit and flesh, 50 chance to dodge all physical attacks. Description: exceptional swimmers, skittish, devoid of bodily needs, active day and night, walking irrigation machines. 50% physical dodge chance. How were they supposed to fight these things? Zhang Rui's brow furrowed, only to hear 2 sharp barks beside him. Duo had already bolted forward, pouncing straight for the lead drowned wraith. A single paw strike smashed the creature's skull open like an overripe melon. A system notification popped up immediately afterward. 24 drowned wraiths, overcome with terror, refused to fight you and wish to submit as your servants. Accept their allegiance? What? They surrendered just like that? A laugh bubbled up in Zhang Rui's chest. These creatures were truly cowards. Accept. Servants gained. 24 times drowned wraith free labor was too good to pass up. While drowned wraiths could not grow stronger by eating, they required no sleep and could farm nonstop around the clock. Better still, the puddles they left in their wake watered crops with unmatched efficiency. Zhang Rui's mood soared. No more monsters appeared in the minutes that followed. When mist rolled back to blanket the grove, the occupation countdown reached its end, and the system alert chimed. Resource node successfully occupied, Small Berry Grove. Without hesitation, Zhang Rui condensed the entire grove into a portable model and stowed it in his lord's backpack. Leaving the grove rooted in place would require constant troop garrisons to fend off monster raids, and he had no spare soldiers to station here long-term. Transporting it back to reposition near his main territory was far smarter. This was the key difference between claiming a node and merely harvesting its resources. His first resource node secured. Next objective. Let's move out. He tied the two still-breathing werewolves' ankles to Dun Dun's legs, climbed the elephant's trunk ladder, and settled firmly atop its back. He felt triumphant, brimming with confidence. They'd set off originally as 2 humans, 1 horse, 1 hound, and 1 elephant. Now his party numbered 31 units total, 2 captives plus 24 new servants. The whole procession marched west toward the freshwater lake. The 2 nodes lay remarkably close. After 5 minutes' travel, glistening lake waters came into view. The shore lay eerily still, devoid of any sheep or cattle. Likely all wildlife had fled before the drowned rate's advance. Freshwater lake rank. Small-scale resource node reserves. 10 million tons freshwater resources. Crucian carp, common carp, grass carp, catfish, reeds. Current status. Unoccupiable. Unlike the berry grove, this lake could not yet be claimed. The reason was simple. Its vast expanse stretched partially beyond the explorable zone, with large sections submerged in uncharted dark territory, making full occupation impossible. Zhang Rui felt little disappointment. Go, catch as many fish as you can. The 24 drowned wraiths obeyed instantly, turning as one to wade into the lake without creating a single splash, their forms merging seamlessly with the water. They'd dominate any diving competition with that stealth. Their fishing speed was equally impressive. In mere moments, a pile of fresh fish stacked high upon the shore. Crucian carp, grass carp, common carp, catfish, all kinds of fish were here, wriggling lively and flicking their tails. Zhang Rui watched the drowned ones moving through the water with effortless ease and couldn't help muttering to himself. No wonder they're called the drowned ones. They must have drowned while fishing when they were alive. They're absurdly good at this line of work. Just then, one of the drowned ones suddenly surfaced in excitement, clutching an object high above its head and sprinting toward the shore. It was a rusted treasure chest entirely painted blue, roughly the size of a crate of beer, its edges coated with water weeds and mud. Zhang Rui's eyes lit up instantly. There were countless ways to obtain items and resources in the boundless void: slaying monsters, farming and mining, trading, plundering. Among all these methods, loot stored inside treasure chests was undoubtedly the finest. Every chest had been hidden away by native inhabitants who knew their death was near. They refused to let their precious belongings fall into strangers' hands. Even a white-grade chest might spawn a golden-tier treasure. Not to mention this was a blue-grade chest. It would at minimum yield a purple-quality item. Relic chest of the lost folk. Tier blue. Description: the owner's unfulfilled wishes have been resolved. The chest may now be opened. What a lovely day, all my wishes are coming true. Zhang Rui thought to himself. I've got zero self-control. I can't relate to people who stay calm and composed. He knelt down and took the chest from the drowned one's grasp. Treasure chests were nothing rare in the boundless void. The true value lay in what lay inside. Of course, they couldn't be opened willy-nilly. Some unlocked immediately, some bore restrictive enchantments. Others required defeating a guardian first. For enchanted chests, there were 2 ways to break their seals. Either possess a chest-opening skill, or fulfill the late owner's final wishes, such as slaying their enemies, caring for their family and descendants, and so forth. This chest should have been bound by an enchantment too, but someone had already fulfilled its owner's wishes, or all their foes were long dead. A windfall for Zhang Rui, letting him crack it open with ease. The contents of each chest were fixed, unaffected by luck. He reached out and lifted the lid. A crimson glow seeped through the crack, growing brighter by the second, until the chest swung fully open. A circular disc slowly floated upward, hovering mid-air and spinning on its own. 70 centimeters in diameter and 10 centimeters thick, its surface etched all over with flame runes. As it rotated, the carvings blazed as if real fire burned within, waves of scorching heat surging outward non-stop. Yin-Yang Wheel, Yang Disc. Tier Red. Trait 1. Unbreakable, impervious to fire and water. Trait 2. Shape-shifting, able to split into countless replicas. Trait 3. Levitating flight, 10,000 li per day. Trait 4. Homing strike when thrown. Trait 5. Spinning ignites flames, wildfire engulfs all land. Description: full traits unlocked once bonded to an owner. Zhang Rui stared at the red tier marking for several seconds, his mind going blank. A red tier gear? Just handed to him like this? He drew a deep breath and reread the stat panel carefully. Equipment in the boundless void had no numerical stats. Not even red tier gear carried any. Gear quality was judged solely by 3 metrics: durability, sharpness, and possession of unique traits. The first 2 traits spoke for themselves. Indestructible no matter how hard you struck it. Capable of shrinking or expanding freely like the golden cudgel, and splitting from 1 into 2, 2 into 4 endlessly. The final 3 traits, the more he read, the more familiar they felt. Levitating flight, homing attacks when hurled, flame generation. This was exactly Nez's wind-fire wheels. He examined each trait's detailed notes. Its 10,000 li daily speed was impressive, roughly matching a high-speed train's constant cruising velocity. Yet riding this disc was nothing like taking a train. Trains sheltered passengers inside an iron carriage. This wheel stood bare beneath your feet and carried you soaring through the air. If the rider's physique was insufficient, the sheer velocity would overwhelm their body. Trait 5 was this gear's core source of damage. Trait 5, spinning ignites flames, wildfire engulfs all land. 1 full rotation spawns a 10-centimeter fire orb. 10 rotations spawn a 100-centimeter blaze, capped at 1 million rotations total. Flames extinguish once rotation stops. The rider may manipulate fire at will. Flame temperature varies based on the wielder, maxing out at 100,000 degrees Celsius. Rotation speed and duration are tied directly to the user's spirit stat. Variable flame temperature made perfect sense. Even standing beside a bonfire without touching it, thermal radiation alone would leave you uncomfortable. A peak heat of 100,000 degrees Celsius. Zhang Rui quickly ran a mental comparison. Iron melted at roughly 1,500 degrees, steel between 1,400 and 1,500, and even specialized alloys topped out around 3,000 degrees. 3,000 degrees was hot enough to incinerate most gear and monsters to ash. Thermal radiation at 5,000 degrees would carbonize unprotected skin from 10 meters away. The actual heat output depended entirely on how much extreme heat the rider could withstand. Whether he could hit the 100,000 degree cap remained to be seen, but the upper limit alone was intimidating enough. He couldn't wait to test its power for himself. Zhang Rui bonded the equipment on the spot. The disc hummed and slid to his feet, splitting into 2 separate wheels like a pair of loyal pets. He stepped onto them. The balance was steady as standing on flat ground. A flicker of thought sent the twin wheels lifting him smoothly off the ground. 1 meter, 3 meters, 5 meters. Zhang Rui hovered midair and glanced down. Li Yi craned his neck. Duo tilted his head upward, and Dun Dun stared too. They all wore the awestruck expressions of children gazing at someone else's fancy toy. So this is what flying feels like. Pretty great. Zhang Rui zipped left and right atop the wheels, growing steadily more adept at controlling them. Though they resembled self-balancing scooters, they were far more agile. A single thought adjusted acceleration, deceleration, direction, and altitude instantly. Growing bolder by the second, he shot straight toward the lake at full speed. The wind stung his cheeks as velocity spiked. 2 thin streaks of fire trailed from the wheels, billowing massive clouds of white steam above the lake's surface. On his way back, he flicked his right foot and sent the right wheel flying. The disc whirled through the air, its flames roaring brighter, shaping into a fiery dragon at Zhang Rui's mental command, imposing and mighty. A wide grin split Zhang Rui's face. Now he had reliable means to defend himself. He played with the wheels until lunchtime, only landing reluctantly once hunger hit. He used the wind-fire wheels as a makeshift campfire to cook the fresh-caught fish, sweet potatoes, and corn he'd brought along. Before long, the fish skins turned golden brown and oozed grease. The sweet potatoes split open, revealing glowing orange flesh. The rich aroma mixed with the lake's briny breeze and drifted far across the water, making the 2 wolves salivate nonstop. Swear fealty to me now, and you'll get a share of this food. Zhang Rui held up a grilled fish to tempt the 2 wolfmen. When they showed no willingness to submit, he ignored them entirely. He plopped onto the ground, grilled fish in his left hand and roasted sweet potato in his right. He opened the regional chat channel to scroll while eating. Food shortages remained the dominant topic of conversation. 90 out of every 100 messages were desperate cries over starvation. The novice phase had yet to end, so new lords could only gather resources from their small territories and nightly monster invasions. This crisis would only ease once the novice period concluded, unlocking new resource zones to explore. Zombie Brother carried on his casual boasting as usual, claiming he'd seized another zombie barracks. His tone tried to sound nonchalant, yet his smug pride practically leaked through the screen. Zhang Rui gnawed on a fishtail when a glowing gold message suddenly pinned itself to the top of the chat log. Bordered in gilded trim, its bold scarlet font floating above all other dialogue. Zhao Hao ID 114514. Tomorrow noon. Anyone with coordinates of farm-type territories, send them my way. Generous compensation guaranteed for verified locations. The chat channel erupted the second the message posted. Holy hell! A bounty for territory coordinates? Did someone already get a territory relocation scroll? Damn, my troops are starving, and this guy's already hunting bounties. Farm territory coordinates. Is he tracking that blessed farmer lord? I don't think that farmer will survive the novice phase. Farm territories aren't one of a kind. Even if it's not the blessed lord's, seizing it locks in a steady food supply. Zhang Rui bit into his sweet potato and chewed slowly. Only someone with immense wealth could post a pinned announcement at this stage. At minimum, he must own territory relocation scrolls to move his domain and megaphone items to broadcast pinned messages. This only proved how coveted farm territories were, and how vulnerable they were early game. Even if you thrived well at the start and fended off neighboring raiders, your enemies could sell your coordinates to powerful lords with relocation scrolls, who would move their entire domain straight on top of yours. Still, Zhang Rui did not dwell on it much. Even if Zhao Hao was exceptionally strong, relocating a territory took time. By the time Zhao Hao arrived, Zhang Rui's troops would have grown exponentially stronger. Yet a sudden thought crossed his mind. Should I leak my coordinates for the bounty, then lie in wait to ambush him? After brief consideration, he dismissed the idea. The plan carried too great a risk of backfiring. Territory development ultimately hinged on troop cultivation, and his core method for raising powerful units was farming. Planting crops earned him more tech points to unlock revolutionary agricultural innovations, which would feed a steady stream of elite crops to strengthen his soldiers. He possessed a unique growth path no other lord had. Gambling his safety for quick gains was unnecessary. Zhang Rui focused back on his meal. The fragrant scent of premium crops drifted across the lake breeze. Several cattle and sheep wandered over from a distance, drawn by the roasting sweet potatoes. The livestock stood far off, pausing occasionally to graze, then glancing warily at the colossal Dundun, too afraid to draw near. Li Yi, go capture all of them alive. Understood. Li Yi vaulted onto his steed and galloped after the herd. Moments later, the high-pitched bleats of sheep echoed across the lakeshore before falling silent. Meanwhile, the drowned ones, creatures with no bodily needs who never hungered, had fished tirelessly back and forth in the lake since Zhang Rui's group arrived. Several burlap sacks stood piled high with fish on the shore. Li Yi returned 3 separate times, sheep slung over his shoulders and cattle gripped in his hands, a broad smile plastered across his face. After lunch, Zhang Rui washed his hands by the lake and glanced at the stacks of sacks and livestock scattered across the grass. He brushed water droplets off his palms. Pack everything up, we head home. He planned to pin all the livestock back at his territory. Living creatures could not be stored inside a lord's inventory. He pulled animal sinew looted earlier from goblins and wolfmen out of his bag, binding the cattle and sheep's legs tight to prevent escapes along the journey. Carry all of this back. The 24 drowned ones obeyed instantly, springing into action. Some hoisted full fish sacks onto their shoulders single-handed. Others teamed up in pairs or trios to haul full-grown cattle and sheep. Their waterlogged feet left strings of wet footprints across the grass. Zhang Rui hovered overhead, directing them to spread out and form a long single-file line, leaving a 10-step gap between every individual or team. This formation held a critical advantage. Their return route ran along the southern bank and passed through mist zones. All mist within 10 meters of each unit would disperse automatically, lighting up a massive stretch of uncharted shadow terrain on the map in one trip. Perhaps the mass monster hordes drawn to the berry grove had been fully eliminated earlier, for the journey back proved eerily peaceful. Not a single wolfman or goblin crossed their path, nor even any formidable wild beasts. He did spot a handful more stray cattle and sheep along the way. Li Yi charged after them, flicking hard forehead flicks at each animal. The livestock collapsed limply without a single bleat. Once again acting as a living beast of burden, he slung one cow over each shoulder and clutched a sheep in each hand, trudging swiftly across the grass hauling over 1,000 jin of livestock meat. Even Zhang Rui was forced to pitch in, carrying one sheep in each hand. He flew low to the ground, staring at the sheep legs dangling from his grasp, and sighing quietly. If I hadn't boosted my physique with premium crops, I never could have lifted 2 sheep at once. They reached the territory shortly past 2 in the afternoon. Zhang Rui landed gently atop his wind-fire wheels and dropped the 2 sheep onto the ground. Sacks of fish and livestock tumbled across the grass, sparking an uproar among the merchant caravan members. The young man Shirley craned his neck, staring wide-eyed. Good heavens, are these sacks stuffed full of fish? So many of them. Whoa, wolfmen too. Our lord captured wolfmen alive. What is that thing beneath the lord's feet? Shirjin stepped forward from the crowd and bowed respectfully to Zhang Rui. Immediately slipping into his role as steward, he shouted out work assignments per Zhang Rui's instructions. Half the workers dug pits in the empty territory clearing, while the rest chopped timber and drove stakes into the ground to build simple livestock fencing. Zhang Rui's tools traded for grains supplemented their work, with Dundun lending his brute strength. In no time, a makeshift fish pond and surrounding livestock enclosure stood complete. The drowned ones jumped down into the dug pit. Water dripping from their bodies quickly pooled a shallow layer at the bottom. Farmers hauled bucket after bucket of well water to fill the pond further. Lively fish were tossed into the water, while dead ones belly up were piled aside to be dried into jerky or grilled for dinner. All cattle and sheep were untied and herded into the fence pen. Premium crop feed was scattered across the ground inside. The livestock ate greedily without the slightest trace of resistance. Everything fell into perfect order. Though 2 hours of farming time had been lost, the trip had been well worth it. This stockpile of meat would let his troops eat regularly, boosting their explosive strength and stamina to unlock their full physique potential. Explosive damage relied heavily on meat intake. A soldier with 100 physique who only ate grain could only deal damage equal to their physique stat. If they consumed meat often to raise explosive power, that same 100 physique could output 150 damage minimum, even topping out at 200. While the workers busied themselves, Zhang Rui stayed productive. He rode his wind-fire wheels, grabbed the 2 wolfmen, and tossed them straight into the dungeon. Prisoners, 2 wolfmen, defection time required, 60 hours. Consume 100 gene of grain to cut defection time by 6 hours. That's steep. Zhang Rui clicked his tongue. A white-tier dungeon doubling the cost to convert green-tier wolfmen tenfold. No matter, he had mountains of grain to spare. He waved a hand, and 2,000 gene of grain vanished from his inventory, transforming into void energy that flooded the dungeon. The defection timer plummeted hour by hour. The system pinged with a defection successful notification just as Zhang Rui knelt beside the dungeon entrance to peer down. The 2 wolfmen shook their heads and sighed, the vicious crimson glow fading entirely from their eyes. They lifted their heads to gaze at Zhang Rui, low whimpers rumbling in their throats. It worked. Wolfmen converted via dungeon defection were bound by void rules and could never betray their lord. Zhang Rui descended the dungeon stairs, untying their restraints and resetting the dislocated shoulders of the wolfman whose arms had been twisted behind its back. The wolfman winced sharply in pain, yet its wounds oozing blood sealed before his eyes at a visible rate. Eat. Zhang Rui tossed dried meat and premium crops down to them. He watched the 2 wolfmen devour the food ravenously, mentally plotting his strategy. I'll feed you well at first to show you life with me means meat every day. Once you're worn out from labor, you get smaller rations. Repeat the cycle. This classic capitalist tactic works anywhere, no matter the world. The wolfmen licked every scrap of food clean, standing with their tails wagging wildly behind them. Having turned the werewolves to his side, Zhang Rui watched them join the work crew. He stepped back onto his wind-fire wheel once more, circling the reclamation zone round and round to dispel the lingering mist. The wind-fire wheel moved at blistering speed, and with the overhead bird's-eye view, he could spot every cow and sheep down below at a single glance. In less than half an hour of flight, he rounded up several more scattered cattle and sheep. He even spotted a drab wild horse. He dived after it, wrapped his arms around its back, tamed it, and brought it back. When every wisp of mist across the entire reclamation zone had finally been fully cleared, the system notification chimed. Westlake grassland has been incorporated into your territorial bounds. Use boundary steel, city walls, or fences to anchor it and fully integrate the land into your territory. A territory's bounds worked much like territorial waters for coastal nations. A nation held rights to develop, utilize, and judicially govern its territorial waters. But if the entire nation relocated, those waters could not be taken along. The same logic applied to territorial bounds versus fully integrated territory land. Within the boundless void, lords could use items such as territory migration scrolls to move their territory to a new location. Only land fully integrated and anchored to the territory could be relocated alongside it. To complete full integration, anchoring structures like boundary steels, city walls, or fences were required. Zhang Rui possessed neither boundary steels nor city walls at the moment. Even if he chopped down every willow and poplar he'd planted, he would barely gather enough lumber to make a dent. His only option was to bulk buy massive quantities of lumber from the trading hub. He extended the outer fences far outward, enclosing an additional tract of land 200 meters long by 500 meters wide. After that, Zhang Rui activated territory build mode. The entire territory instantly transformed into an overhead blueprint, allowing him to drag and reposition every building freely. He moved all facilities aside from the watchtower and automatic arrow towers onto the grassland. This cleared the land previously occupied by the giant beast lair, Lord's Manor, and other buildings. A little plowing would turn those vacant plots into prime farmland straight away, vastly expanding his arable acreage. Once everything was rearranged, Zhang Rui exited build mode. Standing atop high ground, he stared toward the distant lake and sighed. If only I had more lumber. I'd stretch the fences all the way to the lakeshore and skip all this tedious digging. There was nothing he could do about it. Lumber was a universal necessity for every lord, so its price in the trading hub never dropped. He only had so many trees growing on his land, and they needed time to mature. Splurging on enough lumber to run fencing straight to the lake simply wasn't cost-effective. I hope I stumble across woodlands or lumber mills and other resource nodes once the newbie grace period ends and I start further reclamation. Zhang Rui silently prayed. He pulled the Berry Grove model from his backpack and tossed it onto an empty patch of prime farmland. The model expanded on impact, spreading thick shrubs across the soil, heavy clusters of crimson berries hanging from every branch. Their sweet, fruity aroma drifted through the air once again. Compared to the previous iteration of the Berry Grove, its stat panel now displayed an extra line of information. Respawn timer. 3 days when placed on prime farmland, timer reduced to 1 day. The meaning was plain. Every 24 hours, over 20,000 gene of berries would respawn, ready to be harvested anew. A pop-up prompt appeared on the empty ground beside the grove. Spend 10,000 lumber, 100 glass, 500 stone to construct a winery. Short on materials? Same as always, he had ample grain, so he would stock up via the trading hub. He traded away bulk grain, and lumber, glass, and stone streamed into his backpack through the trade channel. Clink, clank, clatter. After a flurry of hammering and construction sounds, a small winery materialized out of thin air beside the Berry Grove. It featured timber walls, glass windows, and a stone foundation, looking impressively authentic at first glance. Territory facility, winery quality, white effect. Brew alcohol by inputting wheat, barley, sorghum, berries, fruits, mountain spring water, well water, and other ingredients. Minimum brew time, 7 days. Simultaneous brewing capacity, 10 barrels. Normal alcohol brewing required distillers' yeast and fermentation starters. Relying solely on natural wild yeast from fruit skins led to slow fermentation and frequent failed batches. Yet the boundless void operated by different, far less troublesome rules. White-quality raw materials yielded white-quality liquor in exactly 7 days, with zero risk of spoilage. He already held apples and wheat in his backpack, but first he needed to harvest a large batch of berries. Zhang Rui walked over to the berry grove and plucked handfuls of fruit. Obtained. Common berries times 8 gene, green quality berries times 7 gene. Green quality berries. Consume 1 gene to gain plus 10 spirit stat points. Obtained. Premium berries times 2 gene, premium green quality berries times 3 gene, premium green quality berries. Consume 1 gene to gain plus 100 spirit stat points. Holy hell. Could his planting tech cheat trigger even here? Zhang Rui's mind reeled. This grove was not something he had planted himself, yet his agricultural black tech had activated regardless. He distinctly recalled the first time he'd found the wild berry grove. Done, and he had picked plenty of fruit to sample. Yet no bonus notifications had popped up back then, with neither abundance nor premium produce activating at all. Now, simply relocating the grove within his territory was enough to trigger his planting technologies. Without a second thought, Zhang Rui shouted to his workforce. Everyone, come over and strip every last berry off these bushes. The crew swarmed forward, plucking fruit non-stop and dumping the berries into burlap sacks. The bonus mechanic worked differently for him versus the rest of his creatures. As the owner of the cheat system, activating the tech multiplied the fruit yield directly, with excess berries deposited into his lord's backpack. For other beings harvesting the grove, the planting tech warped their perception of the crop volume. Take Li Yi, who had seen the original wild berry grove before. He stared at the bush that should have only held 20,000 gene of berries, now bursting with over 100,000 gene, thoroughly confused. I swear there weren't nearly this many berries before. He pushed the confusion aside. Their lord was simply incredible. Once every berry had been picked clean. Obtained. Common berries times 145,000 gene. Green quality berries times 800 gene obtained. Premium berries times 500 gene. Premium green quality berries times 20 gene tech points gained. 151.32. This was phenomenal. Incredible. Astounding. His stock of tech points had surged by a massive margin. With a full respawn cycle every 24 hours, he would earn roughly 150 extra tech points each single day. More importantly, if moving a wild berry grove into his territory let his planting tech activate during harvest, then what about wild wheat fields, watermelon patches, and vineyards he might discover later? As long as he relocated them inside his territory bounds before gathering the crops, the same bonus effect would apply. With enough such wild resource nodes, he would never need to plant every crop himself. His daily tech point income would skyrocket effortlessly. He could level up premium produce in no time and unlock the second tier of his planting tech tree. Zhang Rui was beside himself with excitement, far happier than he'd been when he first acquired the Windfire wheel. Powerful equipment was merely an external tool. His agricultural cheat code was the true foundation of his strength and survival. What a wonderful day. Humming a cheerful tune, he stepped inside the winery. 10 empty brewing barrels lined the room, waiting to be filled with ingredients. Brew time did not depend on raw material quality. It was determined solely by the volume of void energy stored within the ingredients. Brewing with premium crops would multiply the fermentation time tenfold, far too slow for his timeline. Thus, Zhang Rui exclusively chose ordinary crops for his batches. 2 barrels wheat liquor, 2 barrels corn liquor, 2 barrels apple wine, 4 barrels berry wine. He poured in 8,000 gene of grain and fruit, plus 2,000 gene of well water. After 7 days, he would receive 10,000 gene of finished liquor in return. The total stat gain potential remained unchanged at 80,000 points. The advantage of liquor over solid food was that it did not fill the stomach and digested far faster. Sipping a flask before battle delivered stat boosts much quicker than forcing down dry rations, while also boosting cold resistance, courage, and troop morale. High-tier liquors were even more potent. Some required 2 gene of grain to produce just 1 gene of alcohol, compressing void energy into the drink for exponentially faster absorption. To craft superior liquors, however, he needed master brewers and an upgraded winery. He lacked both at present, so he filed the thought away to pursue later. While Zhang Rui tinkered with the winery, Li Yi, Dun Dun, the 2 werewolves, and the drowned creatures kept busy elsewhere. The makeshift fish pond and livestock enclosures were fully finished. All empty land left vacant after relocating the Lord's manor and giant beast lair had been plowed, transformed into hundreds of neat new prime farm plots. Apple seeds, corn seeds, potato tubers. The crew planted a fresh batch of crops totaling 500 units. This quintupled his original planting capacity of just 100 plots. 10 farm plots yield 1,000 gene of crops, equal to 1 tech point. Zhang Rui calculated to himself. 500 plots produce 50,000 gene total, for 50 tech points per harvest cycle. Subtracting the 30 premium crop bonus, each full planting round nets roughly 35 tech points. 8 cycles a day equals 280 tech points daily. By noon tomorrow, I will have enough tech points to upgrade premium produce. Standing on the farm ridges, watching his workers labor together to fill his tech point reserves, Zhang Rui brimmed with anticipation. Once premium produce reached level 2, his tech point gains would accelerate even further. At level 3, every tier 1 planting tech would be maxed out. What revolutionary black tech would unlock when tier 2 of the tech tree became accessible? Automatic seed preservation? Crossbreeding? Grafting? Every possibility filled him with eager curiosity. Excitement aside, dinner time had arrived. He now had far more mouths to feed than the previous day, drastically increasing the workload. Fortunately, several merchants from Shurjin's caravan knew how to cook. Zhang Rui delegated all dinner preparations to them. He himself only manned the Windfire wheel to assist with stoking the cooking fires, far faster than lighting kindling with flint and steel. I almost forgot. Li Yi's spear got broken by the werewolves. Zhang Rui glanced over at the werewolves tirelessly exterminating field pests, and suddenly remembered. A human infantryman unarmed fought nothing like one wielding a proper weapon. Li Yi possessed solid physique stats and could hold his own bare-handed, but a functional weapon unlocked 2 combat skills, doubling his battle prowess. He opened the trading market and searched the equipment weapons category for spears. Equipment: ordinary shotgun, price, 300 gene grain equipment. Pear blossom spear, price, 300 gene grain, stock, 30 equipment. Green quality red tassel spear, price, 300 gene grain equipment. Hook sickle spear, price, 100 gene grain. Rows upon rows of options popped up, ranging widely in price and design. There were basic shotguns firing 10 pellets per blast, pear blossom spears fitted with flamethrower nozzles beneath the spearheads, plus red tassel spears, hook sickle spears, pistols, and countless other armaments. Plenty of lucky lords out there, trading away firearms already, Zhang Rui murmured in awe. He saw no point haggling to drive prices down. 300 gene grain per weapon might as well be free to him. He purchased the shotgun, all 30 pear blossom spears, and the green quality red tassel spear outright. He also stocked up on sulfur, arsenic, and other combustible poisons to load into the pear blossom spear flamethrower attachments. The pear blossom spears would mostly go to auxiliary support crew like Shurjin's men. Flaming and toxic spear strikes boosted their overall combat effectiveness far more drastically than equipping them with crude wolfsbane clubs. This was the power of surplus grain. While most lords' troops starved on empty stomachs, struggling to maintain their stats, Zhang Rui had already outfitted his farmer support staff with standardized military weaponry. He browsed the trading hub a while longer, replenishing his stock of seeds and saplings. He noticed numerous lords listing territorial facilities for sale at rock-bottom prices, snapped up within seconds of posting. Wealthy grain-rich lords were clearly timing the market to buy assets on the cheap. Savvy opportunists, Zhang Rui thought knowingly. Noon tomorrow marked the end of the newbie grace period. Lords crippled by grain shortages, whose troops suffered permanent stat loss and could barely move, were desperate to liquidate their assets for food. Lords with surplus grain waited for this exact window to bulk by cheap facilities. Zhang Rui had no intention of missing the opportunity. He listed his goods directly onto the trading board. Ask price: 5,000 gene food, for sale, lumber mill, quarry, mine, ranch, tavern, hero altar. Ask price: 1,000 gene food, for sale, workshop, jail, blacksmith forge. Ask price: 500 gene food, for sale, stable, warehouse. Ask price: 300 gene food, for sale, automatic arrow tower, kitchen. This chance would not come again. If he failed to seize this moment of abundant supply and few buyers, later competition would turn the market into a feeding frenzy with too many lords chasing too few assets. Zhang Rui listed all his surplus common food stocks for trade. His highest-priced listing drew no immediate responses. High-tier buildings were rare, and owners would hold on to them unless truly desperate for grain. His second, third, and especially fourth listings sold rapidly. Barely a dozen seconds after posting, over 30 orders had completed. His stockpiled grain flowed out like water, and model after model of territorial facilities flooded into his lord's backpack. The trading hub sorted identical goods by price and trade volume. Even with dozens of other lords listing food for sale that hour, his 4 trade listings racked up dozens of completed transactions, drawing widespread attention. Damn, how much grain does this guy even have? At least 70 or 80,000 gene, judging by all these sold trade screenshots. More than that, the 300 gene listing has over 100 sales. I reckon he's sitting on nearly 200,000 gene of food. Bullshit. 200,000 gene grain. I sold an automatic arrow tower and only got 20 gene grain. Most of the payment was just berries. Berries count as food, don't they? He listed food, not staple grain specifically. Fruit is edible regardless. Wait a second. Could this seller be Zhang Rui, the one who traded for the Divine Grace Farm Lord token? Where else would someone get this much food? Quit joking. He couldn't have gathered all this food just today. Even if he only had 20 or 30,000 gene yesterday. Think about the monster waves hitting at 6 p.m. Strong, numerous beasts attacking non-stop. He only started with 1 soldier. How could a single unit hold off those raids, even if stuffed full of food? Fair point. So who is this seller then? Who cares? Probably another lucky lord who found a grain silo after drawing a reclamation token this morning. Ugh, I'm sick with envy. A user suddenly cleared their throat and posted a new message in the chat. Guys, my zombie drank so much blood it can leap 7 or 8 meters straight up. Plus video plus stat panel. Unit, leaping zombie quality, blue physique, 500 spirit, 100 talents, extreme leap, spring burst, flexible physique, night vision adaptation skills, pounce assault, elastic combo strike description. evolved from a black zombie after absorbing sufficient vital blood essence, drastically enhanced speed, leaping power, and bodily flexibility. Are you kidding me? This guy's been flexing his zombie unit for 3 straight days and still won't shut up. The entire chat thread veered off course after the zombie's stats were posted. No one continued discussing the mysterious grain seller or guessing his identity. Since it was not yet mealtime, Zhang Rui paid no mind to the chatter. He was busy placing each newly traded territorial facility model across his land. Blacksmith forge, kitchen, warehouse, arrow towers. Each model materialized into a full building upon placement. His once sparse territory soon dotted with functional structures, and his humble farm finally took shape as a proper, fully developed lord's domain.